Chapter 2805. The newcomer was Xing Jin Great Ian God. He had been waiting for Lin Feng for a long time and had thought that he wouldn't have the chance to personally kill Lin Feng. He had never imagined that Lin Feng would actually appear before him once again, which made Xing Jin Great Ian God very excited. This time, he wouldn't give Lin Feng any chance to escape. Crack! A black talisman flashed in Xing Jin Great Ian God's hand. The lines on the talisman looked extremely strange, but they emitted a strange energy. As the talisman flashed, two black lights turned into arcs of light that surrounded Xing Jin Great Ian God and Lin Feng in an oval circle. See. Black lights flickered and killing intent spread. Oh! Death Battle Talisman. The Death Battle Talisman of the first sub-universe. This is very rare. Looks like there is an irreconcilable enmity between them. If it were me, I wouldn't be willing to part with this Death Battle Talisman. The surrounding peak Yuan venerates weren't ordinary people, so they could see through Xing Jin Great Ian God's treasure at a glance. Although it was only a talisman, the price of the Death Battle Talisman was high and comparable to a supreme chaotic treasure. Once used, the seal would only be lifted if the other party died. This was called the Death Battle Talisman. Not only that, it was extremely dangerous to engage in a life-and-death battle under the watchful eyes of so many people. Even if you could kill your opponent, once you were seriously injured, the surrounding cultivators would be happy to reap the benefits and take advantage of the situation. Xing Jin Great Ian God wasn't impulsive. Even though Lin Feng had escaped several times, he was still very calm. He naturally knew that using the Death Battle Talisman was very dangerous and fighting here was even more dangerous. However, Xing Jin Great Ian God had absolute confidence in his own strength. Not long ago, he had been unscathed in his battle with Lin Feng. Lin Feng's attacks simply weren't enough to break through his defenses. However, Lin Feng's life-saving methods gave him a headache. He always managed to escape with his life and hide well every time. No one could find him no matter how hard they tried. Furthermore, Xing Jin Great Ian God believed that even if he unfortunately died here, it would be a great contribution if he could kill Lin Feng. When the time came, his good brother would find a way to revive him. Almighties were very strong, but once an almighty died, they could not be revived. Peak Yuan venerates could be revived as long as they paid a high enough price to invite a universe ruler to reverse time and space. This time, you have nowhere to run. Xing Jin Great Ian God was like a god of war. He raised his head high, and his huge body gave off a powerful pressure. His combat strength was comparable to that of a middle almighty. Although he wasn't the strongest in the core region of the 100 million wheel tomb, he was still considered decent. I didn't even think of escaping. Lin Feng's indifferent voice inexplicably caused Xing Jin's heart to tighten. A feeling of uneasiness rose in his heart, and in an instant, there was a loud bang in his head as the familiar impact of the Genesis C pressed down on him. Xing Jin Great Ian God wasn't surprised at all when he saw the exact same attack method. Last time, he was able to withstand it perfectly. Naturally, he would be able to do the same this time. No driving mountain. Endless towering mountains appeared, perfectly matching the power of Xing Jin God. This Supreme Chaos True Treasure was one of the 3 Supreme Chaos True Treasures on Xing Jin God's body. Xing Jin Great Ian God was the embodiment of the universe Xing Jin, and defense was his strongest technique. First, he would defend against the opponent's attack, and then slowly grind them to death. This was the most commonly used technique of Xing Jin Great Ian God. Boom! The same Genesis C impact had a completely different power. It was a towering city comparable to the size of Buyu Mountain. It was condensed with perfect source core force and smashed into Buyu Mountain, causing the earth and mountains to shake. What? Xing Jin Great Ian God's face stiffened. This was the first time his source soul had been shaken ever since he had merged with Buyu Mountain. The powerful defense of Buyu Mountain had never disappointed him. No matter how strong his opponent's source soul was, he could easily withstand it. However, this time, boom, boom, boom. The towering giant city continued to smash into unyielding mountain. Lin Feng's origin sea attacks were like overlapping waves, hidden within the giant city. Every time the giant city smashed into unyielding mountain, it contained an astonishing amount of perfect origin soul force. Like a falling star, the perfect source soul force and perfect source core force combined seamlessly and sublimated their power. Break. Surrounded by the black light of the death battle talisman, Lin Feng erupted with his peak fighting spirit. The combination of the power source sacred fruit, the myriad drawing polarity source, the fifth layer of fallen stars, and the city of will produced a tremendous power. The fifth attack shattered Xingjin Great Aeon God's supreme chaos treasure defense. No! Xingjin Great Aeon God was hysterical, his heart filled with fear. When the endless source sea energy poured in, Xingjin Great Aeon God's first reaction was to flee. He knew how terrifying the source sea impact was, especially the opponent in front of him, who had once killed all his great Aeon gods by relying on the source sea impact. Death flag. In an instant, a huge flag with strange patterns fluttered above Xingjin Great Aeon God. As the stars gathered, the patterns on the flag became particularly clear. Another supreme treasure of the chaos. Death flag, TSK, this is a good life-saving treasure. Seems like the outcome has been decided. So fast. That Huang Zun human used the source sea impact. The outcome was decided in an instant. Both the source sea impact and the source soul impact happened in an instant. The surrounding peak Yuan venerates didn't mind watching the show. Although they were surprised that a human like Huang Zun could force a peak Yuan venerate to use the death flag to save his life, they weren't too surprised. After all, this was a common occurrence in the Taichu origin chaos universe. Even the top Taichu Huang Zun, Little Red Saber Rui, had killed Almighties before. He's too stupid. He used the death battle talisman first before using the death battle flag. How could it be effective? It's too late to remove it. The source sea impact is too short, and he has to divert his attention to remove the death battle talisman. He's finished. What an idiot. The peak Yuan venerates sneered. Xingjin Great Aeon God was also stunned. He had completely forgotten about using the death battle talisman and had only thought of using the death battle flag at the critical moment. However, it was already too late. He had dug a hole and buried himself. No. This was the fear in the depths of his source soul. Too many scenes surfaced in the mind of Xingjin Great Aeon God, who had presided over the divine judgment ground for countless eras and was almost invincible in the origin universe. He was Universe Xingjin. He had unique talents and was favored by the will of the heavenly great path. He enjoyed all kinds of luxuries and possessed great power at the level of the universe. However, he would never be able to become an almighty and control his own destiny. He regretted it. He was unwilling. Revive me, brother. Xingjin Great Aeon God's last thought was filled with hatred. His source soul was distorted and ferocious before it was completely annihilated by Lin Feng's boundless source sea energy. The death battle talisman flickered with black light and murderous intent. This was the 100 million wheel tomb, the tomb of the 100 million wheel master and Xingjin Great Aeon God. Chapter 28:06. Xingjin, you are too useless. Within the 100 million wheel tomb, the eternal Aeon God's robes were still as eye-catching as ever. The holy look on his face didn't change at all. Even the deaths of his brothers for countless epochs didn't cause him to change his expression at all. He had received a message from the eternal Aeon God before his death and knew about the eternal Aeon God's unwillingness and hatred. But so what? Resurrection? Haha. The huge wheel of time behind the eternal Aeon God rotated. His eyes were slightly closed as if he was chanting something. The surrounding time seemed to stop in an instant. Rest in peace, Xingjin. I will avenge you. He opened his eyes expressionlessly. The eternal Ian God wouldn't pay a huge price to resurrect Xingjin because it was meaningless. Where there is life, there is death. Life, reincarnation. Everything is destined. The weak don't have the right to be resurrected. Xingjin, you are too useless. In the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb, Lin Feng was floating in the void as he put away the eternal Ian God's treasure. As the black light of the death battle talisman gradually faded and the space lock was restored, the surrounding people looked extremely unfriendly. Whoosh! Lin Feng's gaze swept over them, his expression indifferent. He knew that these Peak Yuan venerates were spying on him, and many of them didn't hide their greed. He had just experienced a fierce battle and his Source C had consumed a lot of energy. Although he had the Great Source Soul Fruit to recover, this wasn't something that could be recovered in a short time. It would definitely be a disaster for Lin Feng if these Peak Yuan venerates swarmed him. He wasn't confident that he could survive. A single Jade Arhut could only block one attack. However, there were too many Peak Yuan venerates here. The more dangerous it was, the calmer he had to be. Lin Feng knew very well that if he showed the slightest sign of weakness or fear, a calamity would await him. On the contrary, although he was in front of everyone, the nail that stuck out would be the nail that took the lead. These Peak Yuan venerates weren't stupid and no one was willing to be the first to make a move. All the Peak Yuan venerates were watching. Lin Feng's strength was undoubtedly evident in the battle just now. Although it was unknown whether it was a Soul Source attack or a Source C attack, being able to instantly kill a Peak Yuan venerate who was not weak and possessed many supreme chaotic treasures was enough to show how tyrannical its combat strength was. However, it was precisely because of this that it attracted the attention of others. The eternal god Xingjin had too many supreme chaos treasures. He had a death battle talisman, a soul defensive true treasure, a battle armor, and the death flag that he had already used. Excluding the death battle talisman and the shattered soul defensive true treasure, he still had at least 2 supreme chaos treasures. This included the fact that his weapon had yet to appear. An expert who owned 4 supreme chaos true treasures had to have at least a supreme chaos true treasure level weapon. At the same time, Huang Zun, the human who had killed him, must have possessed a supreme chaos treasure level soul charging treasure. Although the total value of these supreme chaos treasures might not even be 1/10 or 1/100th of the value of the treasure that was about to be unearthed, how could rare treasures be so easily obtained? In comparison, killing a Huang Zun human was undoubtedly much easier. The Peak Yuan venerates weren't fools, so they knew what was going on. Furthermore, they knew that a Soul Source attack and a Source C attack would consume a lot of energy and couldn't be used continuously. Now, no one wanted to take the lead. Everyone wanted to clean up the mess and take advantage of the situation. Of course, there were also some Peak Yuan venerates who disdained to do such a thing. For example, they didn't even look in this direction. Given their strength, doing such a thing was too degrading. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo wouldn't damage his reputation either. He had a high prestige among the Yuan venerate. It wasn't easy to build a reputation, but it was easy to destroy it. True top powerhouses either cherished their reputation or their reputation. Furthermore, their goal was the same, the super treasure of the 100 million wheel tomb. However, even if they didn't do it, there would always be cultivators who would take the risk out of desperation and greed. Whoosh! A silver figure teleported and appeared, causing the surrounding people to sigh. Qi Yuzi. It's actually him. I didn't expect him to actually make a move. Qi Yuzi has an eccentric personality. He's both good and evil. What's so strange about him making a move? It's actually just right. The Peak Yuan venerates whispered among themselves. Many of them who had been itching to make a move temporarily withdrew their greed. If Ho Ying, Great King Green Hammer, and Heavenly King Zhaokuo represented the first tier Yuan Venerate powerhouses, then Qi Yuzi belonged to the second tier Yuan Venerate powerhouses. There were quite a number of Yuan Venerate powerhouses in the second echelon, such as Rolling Blade Disciple, Old Immortal Mingyu, and Yin Yang Demon Hand, who Lin Feng had fought before. There were more than a dozen of them, and their combat strength was comparable to an upper almighty. As for the third tier Yuan Venerate powerhouses like Sacred Gold and Great Ian God, there were too many of them. The reason it was said that Qi Yuzi had made a move was because he belonged to the second tier Yuan Venerate powerhouses. He had fame, status, and strength. What would happen if a third tier Yuan Venerate powerhouse made a move and successfully killed Lin Feng? Chaos would ensue. Countless Yuan Venerate powerhouses would intervene because they wouldn't be willing to accept this outcome. However, Qi Yuzi's move meant that the third-tier Yuan Venerate powerhouses wouldn't have a chance. The three first-tier Yuan Venerates definitely wouldn't make a move. The second-tier Yuan Venerates were on par with Qi Yuzi in terms of strength. Furthermore, most of them cherished their reputation. Consider yourself unlucky, human. Qi Yuzi laughed heartily as the silver horn on his head emitted a strange glow. The wings on his back also swept through space. Qi Yuzi's attainments in space had already reached the great perfection. Swoosh! Like an arrow of light, it shot straight at Lin Feng. The speed of the attack was so fast that it left everyone flabbergasted. However, Qi Yuzi's body paused strangely in an instant. His expression was distorted as he laughed and cried. In an instant, he emitted a sharp, resounding cry that caused space to shatter. Illusion technique. Gosh, it's an illusion technique. That human's illusion technique is really impressive. All the peak Yuan Venerates were alarmed. They were well aware of Qi Yuzi's strength. He was a well-known mental cultivator with a strong willpower. If even such a mental cultivator could fall for an illusion technique, one could imagine how terrifying the illusion technique of this Huang Zun human was. The combination of illusion techniques and source spirit attacks was simply invincible. Besieging was useless against illusions. Illusions didn't consume much source spirit power and could be used to attack indiscriminately. Boom! The power was like an explosion. Qi Yuzi's body shook violently as boundless perfect source spirit power emerged and broke free. Clack! Clack! Qi Yuzi gritted his teeth and glared furiously at Lin Feng. There was deep fear in his eyes as he instantly stopped attacking and turned to retreat. The surroundings were dead silent. All the peak Yuan Venerates were dumbstruck. This Huang Zun human was too strong. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version website M. Chapter 2807. Thank you, Lin Feng replied. Hee hee. Remember, kid. You owe me a favor. Qi Yuzi's voice rang in Luo Yunyang's ears, but his figure had already disappeared. In fact, this wasn't a battle but a play. Lin Feng agreed without hesitation when Qi Yuzi suggested putting on this play. After all, this was like a timely rain. Otherwise, given Lin Feng's illusory cultivation and Qi Yuzi's willpower, how could the situation have turned out this way? Of course, this play couldn't be hidden from powerhouses like Hu Ying and Heavenly King Zhao. However, such existences wouldn't pay attention to Lin Feng, let alone expose him. Lin Feng felt that it was enough to hide from the greedy powerhouses of the third echelon. Previously, he had still been worrying about how to get through this calamity. Although he had killed Xing Jin and the great Ian God, the latter had left him with a huge problem. One supreme chaos treasure was still acceptable, but who wouldn't be tempted by 3 or 4 supreme chaos treasures? Even if he was willing to hand over these supreme chaos treasures, the peak Yuan Venerates might not let him off. The weaker and more afraid he was, the more they would take advantage of him and act unscrupulously. Lin Feng had a deep understanding of this. The Hongming Sea and the universe were the same. The strong preyed on the weak and ruthless. Strength was the most important thing. If one was strong enough, The other powerhouses would naturally be wary of them and wouldn't dare act blindly without thinking. This was a deal with Qi Yuzi. He had saved Luo Yunyang and Luo Yunyang was on his side. Qi Yuzi had made his intentions clear right from the start. Although he was taking advantage of Luo Yunyang's perilous state, Lin Feng felt that this was a win-win situation. Qi Yuzi, who was in the second echelon, was alone and didn't have any advantage in the competition for the earth treasures. However, with Luo Yunyang's help, even if they might not be able to compete with the three powerhouses of the first echelon, they would at least be able to gain a foothold in the second echelon. This was much more cost-effective than killing Luo Yunyang. Killing Luo Yunyang would always be risky and might not succeed. Even a slight injury to his origin soul would be bad news for a powerhouse like Qi Yuzi, as this would mean that he wouldn't be able to compete for the earth treasures. Moreover, there were too many cultivators in the surroundings who were waiting to reap the benefits of others' work. Qi Yuzi was very smart. It was easy to work with smart people. Since even Qi Yuzi had been defeated by Lin Feng's illusory technique, the other cultivators naturally didn't dare to act presumptuously. Although they really wanted those supreme chaos treasures, they had to look at the right time and the right target. None of the peak Yuan venerates there were fools. If Qi Yuzi could escape from the illusion, could they? Lin Feng didn't give the other peak Yuan venerates a chance to think. After the battle ended, he dove into the crowd. With this, the entire area immediately quieted down and returned to normal. A set of battle armor, a pair of boxing gloves, a domain-type treasure, and a special treasure. A total of 4 supreme chaos treasures. Lin Feng sighed as he counted his spoils of war. The wealth of sacred gold Great Ian God was comparable to all the Yuan venerate powerhouses he had killed before. That was a supreme chaos treasure. In the origin universe, his senior brother and the others only had one. Many Yuan venerate powerhouses didn't even have a peak chaos treasure. Now, he had obtained 4 supreme chaos treasures all at once. Besides, apart from the boxing gloves, he could use the battle armor, domain type, and special chaos treasures. As expected of one of the universe gods of Universe 7's godly tribunal. He's filthy rich. Lin Feng sighed with satisfaction. He wasn't satisfied with the treasures he had obtained, but with the victory he had won. He had accomplished what Senior Yellow Spring hadn't been able to do back then. Although he didn't know if sacred gold Great Ian God would be resurrected in the distant future, he had definitely dealt a heavy blow to Universe 7's godly tribunal and won a comeback. Who's next? Eternal God of Eternity, or the elusive Eternal God of Hope? Apart from the 2 universe gods, Lin Feng didn't care about the others at all. The strongest Kuan Yi Great Ian God of the godly tribunal had been killed by him. The strongest 3-eyed Great Ian God of the Sky Path had been severely injured by him. Back then, he hadn't even had 20% of his current strength. This place is pretty good. Although the other nomological laws are difficult to comprehend, at least my mental cultivation is tyrannical. Most importantly, Almighties can't enter. The natural restrictions of the 100 million wheel tomb prevented Almighties from entering, so Lin Feng wasn't afraid. Almighties were Almighties after all. Even if a peak Yuan venerate's combat strength was comparable to an Almighty's, it was only comparable. The difference in their internal universes alone was like heaven and earth. Outside the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb, a well-trained army was flying at an extremely fast speed. Everywhere they passed, the wind screamed and the cranes screamed. Everyone dodged. 11 experts were wearing the same armor, and their auras were tyrannical. This was the elite team of the 13 Corps. Led by Captain Musin, the 9 members were like wolves and tigers. It was easy for them to carry the weak Tai. Along the way, they had killed countless peak Yuan venerates. Whoever was unlucky enough to run into them would be killed mercilessly at the speed of lightning. In the Taichu Origin Chaotic Universe, the army had a rather high status. Although it wasn't as high and mighty as the seventh sub-universe, it was still one of the top forces that had nothing to fear. Anyone who got in their way would die. Have you investigated thoroughly? Musen asked coldly. Yes, Captain. According to the information provided by the artificial intelligence, the ones who are qualified to be our competitors are Dark Shadow, Great King Greenhammer, Heavenly Monarch Zhaoquo, and the Sky Swamp Alliance, a member reported from behind. Dark Shadow. Musen frowned. Tens of thousands of eras ago, he had fought Dark Shadow and lost. Although he had grown into a commander of the 13 Corps and his strength was comparable to a top almighty, Musen still wasn't confident that he could defeat Dark Shadow. The power hidden in that small body was too terrifying. Everyone who had looked down on him was dead. Great King Greenhammer? Never heard of him. Heavenly Monarch Zhaoquo, this fellow is also here. Musen's voice was low, and the short horn on his brow bone revealed a hint of fear. He wasn't afraid of Great King Greenhammer or Heavenly Monarch Zhaoquo, but of the Sky Swamp Alliance. This was another huge force in the Taichu origin chaotic universe that wasn't inferior to the army system in the slightest. Qianhe, have you discovered any humans like Huang Zun who are adept at using the Source Sea in the core region? Tai Yufu asked anxiously. Musen's eyes lit up when he heard this. This was their true purpose for coming to the 100 million wheel tomb. Yes. The member named Qianhe lifted his head and said, not long ago, a battle occurred in the core region. The victor was that human who was adept at using the Source Sea. That's him. Tai Yufu was overjoyed. His eyes were filled with hatred. Very good. Musen nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Obtaining the treasure was just an extra mission. It would be good if he obtained it, but it didn't matter if he didn't. However, capturing Lin Feng was the order of the Taichu general. He had to complete it. Chapter 2808. How should I cooperate with you later? Lin Feng wasn't far from Chiyuzi. He couldn't see him, but he could easily communicate with him. When the 100 million wheel splendor reaches its peak, all the dark eyes will open and the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb will open. At that time, there's no need to hide our relationship anymore. We can move together, Chiyuzi said. The 100 million wheel splendor was a halo in the core area that emitted a strange energy. The dark eyes were the black eyes that Lin Feng had seen before he had entered. They were mixed with illusion techniques and willpower attack. Lin Feng knew a lot about his alliance with Chiyuzi. He had originally thought that a treasure had been unearthed, but that wasn't the case. The real treasure was in the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. The mystic realm was the realm within the realm of the 100 million wheel master, so the true treasures and secrets of the 100 million wheel master were hidden there. There were endless passageways, endless secrets, and endless treasures. According to limited statistics, the mystic realm in the 100 million wheel tomb had only opened twice. The last time it opened was 573, 96 million epochs ago. No one knew why the mystic realm opened or what was hidden in it. They only knew that the mystic realm was dangerous but also had great opportunities. Any cultivator who came out alive would generally reap some benefit. Treasures unearthed? That was just a rumor that had been passed around. More than 99% of the Yuan Venerate powerhouses here had been born less than 10 million epochs ago. Remember, some of the mystic realms are illusions, but some are real. You have to learn how to distinguish between them. Chiyuzi added, the reason I chose to work with you is not only because you are also a mental cultivator, but also because your willpower surprised me. A Huang Zun human with a willpower that isn't weaker than mine is too rare. Chiyuzi couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Lin Feng smiled modestly. One of the advantages of working with Chiyuzi was that he knew a lot of things. Furthermore, Luo Yunyang's true combat strength was limited and he couldn't go far by relying on the impact of his Source Sea. Although his illusory attacks and controlling attacks were considered decent among peak Yuan venerates, they weren't refined here. The peak Yuan venerates here were too strong. However, the mystic realm in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb was even stronger. The mortality rate was over 99%. The ancient books mentioned that in order to enter the 100 million wheel tomb secret world, one's will has to be at least at the level of an upper-level almighty. It is at least at the level of a pinnacle almighty. Only then will it be safe. Although there are many Yuan venerate powerhouses here, there are less than 100 whose willpower has reached the level of an upper almighty. However, they are all battle-hardened. It's not impossible for them to make a breakthrough in a life-and-death situation. However, even if they do make a breakthrough and reach the level of an upper almighty, they will still be treading on thin ice in the mystic realm. It will be difficult for them to truly soar. Brother Lin, although your strength is ordinary, you have the advantage of being able to cooperate well with me. Moreover, your will is the same as mine, also at the level of a pinnacle almighty. According to my senses, there are only 12 such cultivators here, including you, Brother Lin. Lin Feng nodded. Qi Yuzi was very honest. However, his strength was indeed ordinary in their eyes. Are you referring to the Black Shadow, Great King Green Hammer, and Heavenly King Zhaoque that you mentioned before? Through Qi Yuzi, Lin Feng was very clear about the current fighting strength in the core area. There is also a superpower called the Sky Swamp Alliance, Qi Yuzi said. They hide very well and move separately. I can only be sure that there are 2 of them. Sky Swamp Alliance. Lin Feng muttered softly. There were many tyrannical forces in the Taichu Origin chaotic universe that were much stronger than the 5 great titans of the Origin universe. These tyrannical forces could even destroy a sub-universe with a snap of their fingers. Of course, they wouldn't dare do that. By the way, Brother Qi, what do you think about the sudden opening of the mystic realm? Lin Feng probed. I have read many ancient books, but there is nothing in common with the previous 2 openings. Qi Yuzi pondered for a moment. Some say that it is because of the birth of a treasure, some say that it is because of the manifestation of the Wheel Master, and some say that the Wheel Master is not dead at all. There are too many absurd theories. What do you think, Brother Qi? Some cultivators have triggered the conditions for the opening. Qi Yuzi said firmly, I am a mind cultivator, so I can sense it more clearly than other cultivators. The opening of the wheel essence has an indescribable unique feeling, as if it is the consciousness left behind by the Wheel Master. If I am not wrong, there must be a treasure left behind by the Wheel Master in the mystic realm, waiting for the fated one. As long as that mind cultivator meets the conditions set by the Wheel Master, the mystic realm will open. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. There seemed to be someone looking at him from afar. It was Qi Yuzi. Maybe, Lin Feng said with a faint smile. He was testing Qi Yuzi, but Qi Yuzi was also testing him. The cooperation he mentioned before might be part of the reason, but this should be his real goal. Qi Yuzi seemed to think that he was the source of the opening of the mystic realm. The reason was simple: he was very special. However, Qi Yuzi was not sure, and neither was he. Everyone was exploring. To put it nicely, they were cooperating, but to put it bluntly, they were using each other. Lin Feng did not reject this. If there really is a mind cultivator who meets the conditions set by the Wheel Master, why doesn't the Wheel Master directly bestow the treasure? Lin Feng asked curiously. Qi Yuzi laughed loudly. Brother Lin, have you ever accepted a disciple? You can say that. Lin Feng laughed bitterly. As a teacher, he was very irresponsible. He was basically a hands-off shopkeeper, allowing his disciple to develop freely. Qi Yuzi said, If I am not wrong, the Wheel Master's actions are equivalent to passing down a treasure to his disciple. It is one thing for his disciple to meet the conditions, but to obtain his treasure, they still have to pass his test. Of course, if other mind cultivators can also accidentally pass the test, I believe that the Wheel Master is not a stingy person who hides by convention. Thus, during the first 2 times the mystic realm opened, some powerhouses also obtained treasures. However, I still believe that the Wheel Master's true treasure is still in the mystic realm. Even now, the Wheel Master has not been truly satisfied. Otherwise, the mystic realm would not open again. Lin Feng nodded. This conjecture was reasonable and well-founded. Back when he had become an origin source primal chaos venerate, the path left behind by Elder Yellow Springs had also been full of dangers and obstacles. How could it be so easy to obtain the Wheel Master's treasure now? That was a Xiantian Almighty, a transcendent being at the level of a universe ruler. Furthermore, he was probably quite strong even among universe rulers. While he was thinking, more powerhouses have come, and there are a lot of them this time. Qi Yuzi's voice was suddenly heard. Lin Feng also sensed that there were 10 rather powerful peak yuan venerate auras and 1 more aura. It seemed familiar? What? Lin Feng's expression changed slightly. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website M. Chapter 2809. Lin Feng had a rather deep impression of Tai Yinfu. After all, the first primal chaos ultimate treasure he had obtained here had come from Tai Yinfu. At the same time, he had also obtained many other treasures, including the first batch of Great Source Soul Fruit. His aura was naturally familiar. It's his aura. Has he been resurrected? No, given his strength, it's impossible for him to enter the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. Thump! Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. Tai Yinfu had most likely come for revenge, as there were 10 peak yuan venerates with rather strong auras beside him. None of them were any weaker than the eternal god Xingjin. 10 of them. They were enough to surround and kill Luo Yunyang. What should he do? Run. Lin Feng had no other choice. He simply couldn't fight against 10 powerhouses that weren't any weaker than Sacred Gold. As for Qi Yuzi, who he had just met, it was even more impossible to rely on him. They had only formed a partnership based on mutual benefit. Furthermore, Lin Feng knew very well that Qi Yuzi wouldn't help him resist a strong enemy. Lin Feng didn't like relying on others or asking for help. This was the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. The core area was the dazzling radiance of the 100 million wheel tombs, which were illuminating the black fiendish eyes. One by one, they opened the true mystic realm of the 100 million wheel tomb. Outside were the endless black fiendish eyes. Whoosh! Lin Feng rushed out almost instantly. All his thoughts and judgments had been formed when he sensed Tai Yinfu's aura. There was only one path before Lin Feng. He had to leave before the other party could react. He would lose his life if he continued to lust after the treasures of the 100 million wheel tomb. As long as he left this sealed core area, his chances of survival outside would be much higher. Furthermore, there were countless black fiendish eyes outside the core area that could enter. Lin Feng hadn't been willing to take the risk at the time, but he had to do it now. What happened? Qi Yuzi's voice was heard immediately. He had immediately sensed Lin Feng's strange movements. At the moment, the peak yuan venerates in the core area were also surprised. Lin Feng's sudden departure was undoubtedly rather strange. Because the brilliance of the 100 million wheels had reached its peak and was about to open, everyone was waiting for the treasure to be unearthed. Even if they wanted to leave, there was no reason for them to leave now. Hua! Hua! Strands of law energy suddenly appeared. Without waiting for Lin Feng to approach, the elite team led by Muzin had already taken action. There was no need for Taloff to say anything. The moment they entered the core area, they had already detected Lin Feng's aura. Huang Zun's aura was too eye-catching. As soldiers in the army, carrying out missions was an instinct for them. It was impossible for them to fail to capture Huang Zun. That was the order of the Taichu general, and their mission would be accomplished. Keep them alive. Muzin's voice was calm and confident. The team members instantly took action. One after another, supreme chaos treasures were summoned, and streams of nomological energies were unleashed. They were the elites of the 13th Legion. If they allowed a little guy like Huang Zun to escape right under their noses, they would lose all face. It's him. Taloff gnashed his teeth in hatred, which made Muzin and the other team members even more certain. The human Huang Zun, who was about to escape, was the target they were looking for. Not good. Lin Feng already knew that his escape route had been completely sealed. Forcefully attacking would only lead to his death. As he sped away, a ray of light appeared in his hand. It was the peak illusion-type chaos treasure, the 10 Desires Tribulation. Desire and tribulation were driven by perfect source heart force and erupted with a loud bang. Illusion-type attacks were indiscriminate. This was Lin Feng's true illusion technique. Even though Lin Feng's willpower was astonishing, he still couldn't take on 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the same time. After all, these 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses were really strong. Pfft. In an instant, Lin Feng's technique was broken. His attainments in illusion techniques weren't very high to begin with, let alone dealing with 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the same time. It was like 1 against 10, so the impact on his willpower and source spirit was rather great. Failure was inevitable. Just Muzin alone was enough to make it difficult for Lin Feng to stop him. The reason he had used his illusion technique was to stop the momentum and buy some time. Swish! Lin Feng retreated and sped away in one breath. Although his illusion technique had been broken in an instant and consumed a lot of energy, it had at least given him some breathing room and hope of retreating. It's a dead end ahead. Muzin sneered. He was familiar with the terrain of the 100 million wheel tomb. There was no way out ahead. This Huang Zun human had nowhere to run. All the team members turned into streaks of light and chased after Lin Feng. Muzin brought Taloff along and slowed down. He didn't need to do anything personally. He just needed to take care of the rear and prevent the Huang Zun human from taking drastic measures. His team members would naturally capture the Huang Zun human and bring him back. One escaped while the other 9 chased. Lin Feng didn't even look back as he quickly went deeper. This was a solution within a solution. Given the current situation, there was only one way left, and that was to take a gamble. 9 powerful auras comparable to Almighty's. Each one of them made one's heart tremble. 9 of them appearing at the same time to chase after the same cultivator was breathtaking. It's him again? They are the Taichu 13 Corps. How many enemies does this Huang Zun fellow have? All the peak Yuan venerates were speechless. First, he had been chased by the God of Eternity of the Divine Inquisition. Now, he had attracted the elite warriors of the Taichu 13 Corps. How many outrageous things had this human Huang Zun done? In the Taichu origin chaotic universe, both the Taichu Inquisition and the military represented justice. I should have made a move just now. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo frowned slightly as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. Due to his status, he hadn't made a move earlier. Even though he knew that Lin Feng and Qi Yuzi were putting on an act, he hadn't exposed them. However, it now seemed that his decision had been wrong. Capturing and killing this human Huang Zun might be beneath his status and cause others to criticize him. However, he could gain the favor of the military and the Taichu Inquisition, so the advantages obviously outweighed the disadvantages. That was what he thought, but he didn't regret it. Now that the warriors of the 13 Corps were chasing, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo couldn't intervene. Wouldn't that make the 13 Corps lose face? Furthermore, the 10 elite warriors of the 13 Corps were quite strong. I hope they are just here to carry out a mission, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo thought to himself. If they also got involved and entered the secret realm, they would be very strong competitors. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Streaks of light sped forward. The front was bright and resplendent, and the perfect source energy was overflowing. Lin Feng didn't slow down at all, and the pursuing warriors of the 13 Corps were hot on his heels. Muzan, who was at the back, couldn't help but frown. He vaguely had a bad premonition. Quick, catch him! Musashi's complexion instantly changed as he shouted loudly. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website, Chapter 2810. Just as Muzan's voice sounded, Lin Feng had already passed through the circle of light and completely disappeared into the light. The powerful perfect source heart energy enveloped Lin Feng like a giant beast swallowing him whole. The 913 Corps elites behind him were all dumbfounded. Ta, ta, ta. The soldiers all stopped outside the circle of light, not daring to enter. They came from the military, so their information resources weren't any worse than Chiyuzi's. Even Chiyuzi knew that this was a secret dimension, so how could they not know? No one who went in now would be able to come out. Although entering after the secret dimension opened would still have a 99% chance of survival, it was still better than entering before the secret dimension opened. If they entered now, they would definitely die. I should have thought of this. Muzan gritted his teeth and blamed himself. This was his fault. Although the target was dead, the mission had failed because the Taichu general had given them the mission to bring back this Huang Zun human. How could they bring him back now? Captain, what should we do? Vice Captain Ming Shi asked worriedly. The military had very strict rules. If they failed a mission, they would have to bear a lot of responsibility and be punished according to military rules. Especially since this wasn't a normal mission, but a mission issued by the Taichu general. The punishment would definitely be even more severe. Wait! Muzan's expression was cold as he stared at the light. He naturally wouldn't go in to die. No matter how severe the punishment was, it wouldn't be enough to kill them. At most, they would be demoted, locked up, or sent on extremely dangerous missions. Wait! Everyone was stunned and looked at each other. What kind of solution was this? Muzan glanced at everyone. The 100 million Luan tomb secret dimension is about to open. When we enter and get the target's body, at least part of the mission will be completed. If the general asks, we can say that the target couldn't be captured and fought to the death. Everyone nodded. They knew that once they entered the 100 million Luan tomb secret dimension, some of their comrades would die. Although they were very strong, the secret dimension was extremely dangerous. It was normal for a few of them to die. The captain's words were flawless, and they would complete the mission. After all, according to the captain's confession, it wasn't their fault that the mission wasn't perfectly completed. There must be treasures in the 100 million wheel tomb. If we can obtain one or two, we can make up for our mistake. If any of us were to encounter a fortuitous encounter in the secret realm, it would be even more of a miracle. What do you think? Muzan's gaze swept across the team members and finally landed on Tayloff. The only variable was Taylor. Listen to the captain. We have no problem with that. This is the best solution. The other team members discussed among themselves, and all of them agreed. The expression on Taichu's face betrayed his inner thoughts. His eyes glowed, and he was unable to contain his joy. He was the happiest person to see Lin Feng fall. He had always been suspicious of the Taichu general's orders. If he wanted to kill Lin Feng, then so be it. Why bring him back? He asked his father about this, but his father did not answer him. Now everything was fine. The death of that damned Huang Zun human was exactly what he wanted. He could finally get his revenge. I agree as well. Seeing Captain Muzan and the other team members' gazes land on him, Taylor nodded. If these vicious warriors decided to kill him as well, then it would be over. His father could only ask the Taichu general to revive him once, and that was already the limit. His father could not afford to revive him again. Even if he could, his father might not be willing. However, Taylor also knew that the possibility of this happening was very small. After all, if Muzan did this, it would be the same as betraying the army. Furthermore, Taylor was also looking forward to being able to enter the 100 million wheel tomb. His talent was not too high, and it was all thanks to his father's accumulation of resources. If he could encounter a fortuitous encounter in the secret realm, he would be able to fulfill his wish. With the protection of the 13th Division's elites, there was no need to worry about their safety. Lin Feng's entry into the 100 million wheel tomb did not cause much of a stir. After all, he was not the first and would not be the last. Every time the 100 million wheel tomb retreated, there would always be some corpses at the entrance of the secret realm. What a pity! Although Qi Yuzi felt that it was a pity, he did not think too much about it. He and Lin Feng were only acquaintances. Back then, he had helped Lin Feng for his own personal benefit. Unfortunately, he had put on a show for nothing and lost a partner to work with. After entering the secret realm, he could only fight alone. This kid has too many enemies. The one before was the god of eternity from the godly inquisition of the child universe. After that, it was a warrior from the 13 Corps. His talent is high, but unfortunately, he doesn't know how to be a good person. Qi Yuzi shook his head. In his opinion, Lin Feng's EQ must be too low, and he did not know how to be a good person. That was why he had so many enemies. He was young and did not know how to avoid people and not provoke people that he should not provoke. But then again, geniuses were often arrogant. Could it be that my previous judgment was wrong? Qi Yuzi looked at the 100 million wheels and pondered deeply. In his opinion, Lin Feng was very likely to be the cultivator who had met the conditions to open the secret realm. After all, the other cultivators were not that special. Only Lin Feng was Huang Zun. There were too few Huang Zun who could enter the core area of the 100 million wheels. Huang Zun, who had the strength of an almighty and the will of a top-tier almighty, and who was also a mind cultivator, was even more unheard of. That was why Qi Yuzi came to such a conclusion. Soon there will be an answer. If he really is the source of the secret realm, he won't die so easily. When the 100 million wheels dissipate, his corpse will definitely not be at the entrance of the secret realm. Whoosh, the 100 million wheels shone brightly like a scorching sun. Qi Yuzi's gaze focused. He clearly knew that the 100 million wheels had reached their peak. The black eyes of evil outside opened one by one. When all of them opened, the 100 million wheels would dissipate, and the secret realm would open. At the moment, many cultivators had already started to squeeze towards the outer circle of the 100 million wheels impatiently. They weren't fighting for the unearthed treasure, or being the first to enter the secret realm. Instead, they were fighting for the first treasure, a human-shaped treasure. Lin Feng's corpse. Even though he had been killed by the 100 million wheels, his corpse wouldn't be destroyed. There were at least 5 Supreme Chaos Treasures on Lin Feng's body. Those were Supreme Chaos Treasures. More than half of the peak Yuan venerates here didn't have any Supreme Chaos Treasures on them. Obtaining one would already be a huge gain. Obtaining 5 would be a huge gain. They didn't have the ability or qualifications to fight for the unearthed treasure, but they could fight for a corpse. Furthermore, the other big shots wouldn't fight for it with them. It's mine. I must get it. Crack. All the peak Yuan venerates were envious. The greed that had just been suppressed surfaced once again. They were waiting for the moment the 100 million wheels dissipated so that they could seize the opportunity. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website M. Chapter 2811. What an abundant perfect source heart force. Lin Feng's pores were absorbing the perfect source heart force, which was more than 10 times denser than the perfect source heart force in the Golden Eye realm. It was too bright. It was as if he had entered a world where he couldn't see anything. However, cultivators didn't use their eyes to see but their heart to sense. However, the perfect source heart force here was so dense that they couldn't even sense the aura. How did the cultivators who entered before me die? Lin Feng had heard from Qi Yuzi that all the cultivators who had entered before him had died, but he didn't know how they had died. I understand. After staying for a short while, Lin Feng found out how these cultivators had died. They had died from overeating. Even if one did not absorb the all-pervasive perfect origin heart force, it would still enter one's body in wisps. It was just like how ordinary people needed to breathe in the air. Even if the cultivators here blocked it, the perfect origin heart force would still invade their bodies. What was the root of a Yuan venerate powerhouse? Their physical body? Their soul? No, it was their internal universe. The core was in their internal universe. Once they absorbed too much perfect source heart force, their internal universe would explode and they would die. The perfect origin core force in this place was offensive. Furthermore, its energy was extremely strong. Even a trace of it was very terrifying. This is the core of the 100 million Wheel Master's internal universe. Therefore, the perfect source heart force is actually the energy of his internal universe. How strong was the perfect source heart force of a universe ruler? It was hard to imagine. Even if it was less than 1,000th or 1/10,000th of the energy intensity, it would still far exceed that of an almighty. It was too difficult for a Yuan venerate powerhouse to bear it. Mind cultivators could refine a little, while other Yuan venerates could only resist. However, regardless of whether they were mind cultivators or not, their internal universe had a limit. Just nice. Lin Feng was happy to endure it. His internal universe had always lacked the heart force sky path. Although he had opened and absorbed it in the Silver Eye Realm and the Golden Eye Realm, it was still far from the other 5 great paths. His internal universe was in an imperfect state. A large amount of perfect source heart force was pouring in and turning into resources for his internal universe. He didn't need to be too deliberate. His internal universe would naturally integrate it into it. Not enough. I can take the initiative to absorb a little. Lin Feng had an accurate grasp of the speed. It would be troublesome to absorb too much. However, the current situation was just right. His internal universe seemed to be undergoing a metamorphosis, constantly moving towards perfection. As his internal universe's core strength Heavenly Tao improved, his perfect source heart force also continued to increase. One of the main reasons why they died after entering the radiance of 100 million wheels was because they couldn't find the way. Some mental cultivators should be able to endure here for quite some time. However, perseverance was just perseverance. It wasn't as if they were fish in water. After a long time, they would explode from this offensive perfect source heart force. The eyes of dark malice outside were opening one by one, and the secret realm was slowly opening. It's possible that the real secret realm hasn't opened yet. But the outer area of the secret realm should have been in the opening phase. Lin Feng made his judgment. Because the dark eyes of killing intent had always been partially open, he could enter it. Most importantly, he could feel the call. It was a very strong calling. Qi Yuzi's guess is correct. It's very likely that I'm the source of the secret realm. The continuous appearance of the Silver Eye Realm and the Golden Eye Realm, as well as the strange phenomenon that had occurred when he had entered the radiance of 100 million wheels tomb, further proved this. After entering the radiance of 100 million wheels and feeling the strong calling, Lin Feng was even more certain. Previously, he had been chased to a dead end and had no choice but to enter the radiance of 100 million wheels. They definitely won't chase after me now. Lin Feng was very certain. Who would disregard their lives and barge in despite knowing that it was a dead end? He had no choice, but the Yuan venerates chasing after him had a choice. They could enter after the secret realm opened. Even if they entered, they wouldn't be able to sense any aura here, and they wouldn't be able to find him either. This direction. Lin Feng followed the calling. Even though there was a bright white light and it didn't seem to make any difference where he went, the calling was still very clear. The place where the calling was definitely the correct path. It was very scary to move forward in an area that didn't change at all. If one couldn't sense any aura, they would think that they were going in circles on the same spot and that they were trapped in a maze or illusion. This was a very strong test of one's willpower. Furthermore, there were tests of willpower everywhere in the secret realm. The path? No, it's an illusion. Lin Feng didn't even think about it. He didn't even need to use his willpower to withstand it. The path that suddenly appeared was definitely fake. Even if it wasn't fake, it definitely wasn't the correct path, as the calling was the clearest. Desperate situation? A terrifying vortex suddenly appeared in front of him. This was the restriction of the 100 million wheels tomb. Its terrifying aura could even kill an almighty. Lin Feng's eyes glowed, and his willpower was as firm as steel. Break. This was the willpower of a top almighty. Just as Qi Yuzi had said, having the willpower of a top almighty was the basis for entering the secret realm. The restriction ahead turned into a ray of light and disappeared. Lin Feng continued forward. To Lin Feng, this was an illusion. However, if other cultivators couldn't break through this environment, it was a real restriction. In the secret realm, some were illusions while some were real. The illusions of the black fiendish eye were the same. Lin Feng had learned a lot of secrets from Qi Yuzi, and he had experienced it himself. Thus, he wasn't surprised. This is Eye of Samsara? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He didn't know how long he had traveled, but he had seen a few peak Yuan venerate corpses along the way. Lin Feng didn't stand on ceremony and took the treasures. However, after passing through the illusion restriction, the surrounding environment seemed to change. It was no longer a blinding white light. Instead, other things started to appear. 1, 2, 3, 11? Lin Feng took a deep breath. These were eyes of Samsara. They were difficult to find even in the 100 million wheels tomb. He had been in the 100 million wheels tomb for a long time and had only found 2 eyes of Samsara, each of which contained vigorous perfect source heart force. However, he had found 11 eyes of Samsara not long after entering the secret realm. He had accomplished his mission well. The essence of the eyes of Samsara is perfect source heart force. The perfect source heart force here is so vigorous. It's normal for eyes of Samsara to appear. There must be more than 11. Sure enough, Lin Feng found a few more eyes of Samsara after speeding forward for a while. On the right path, eyes of Samsara were as common as wild fruits by the roadside. Before long, Lin Feng had more than 100 eyes of Samsara in his pocket. I've struck gold. Lin Feng couldn't help but laugh. These were eyes of Samsara. Each one was worth 1 Hongmeng source crystal. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website M. Chapter 2812. 1 Hongmeng source crystal was equivalent to 100 military credit. Lin Feng had picked up more than 100 eyes of Samsara along the way, which was equivalent to gaining 10,000 military credits for free. Naturally, he had earned a lot. Furthermore, this was only the periphery of the mystic realm. He had yet to truly enter the mystic realm. In addition, there were many treasures in the storage rings of the few peak Yuan venerates who had greedily barged into the 100 million wheel splendor. Lin Feng felt like he was opening up a wasteland this time. Being the first to eat crabs would naturally earn him a lot. The radiance of the 100 million wheel splendor is gradually fading. Lin Feng didn't think that it was the 100 million wheel splendor that was fading. It was too much of a coincidence that he had just entered the 100 million wheel splendor. It was more likely that he had left the area covered by the 100 million wheel splendor and entered the true mystic realm, calling out and guiding him forward. Actually, Lin Feng might have been able to obtain more eyes of Samsara if he had taken a detour. However, these were external objects. Lin Feng didn't need them. Once he had the strength, everything else would naturally be available. I've finally left the 100 million wheel splendor. Lin Feng's vision was restored, and everything in front of him suddenly became clear. The void was filled with dark eyes of killing intent, flashing with a strange light. Lin Feng only glanced at them and did not look at them directly, because once he looked at them directly, he could easily trigger the illusion of the dark eyes of killing intent. Although Lin Feng wasn't afraid of fighting, there was no need for that now. So many continents. The continents were like platforms suspended in the void. One could see between continents, but there was an invisible barrier that couldn't be crossed. It seemed like the only way to enter was through the black eyes. The undulating continents were very illusory. There were at least a few dozen continents as far as the eye could see. Calling out wouldn't be of much use at the moment. After all, even if one knew the direction, they wouldn't be able to move forward. Although the location could be fixed through the black eyes, the direction wasn't. Which one should I enter? In front of Lin Feng, there were tens of thousands of black eyes suspended in the void. Every one of them was open and flickered with a strange light, waiting for a cultivator to look at them. But Lin Feng tried to enter the floating continent directly but was blocked by an invisible energy. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Changing directions, Lin Feng switched to the other floating continent. Layers of faint light films were as thick as paper, but they were filled with tyrannical and perfect source heart force. Lin Feng had tried all sorts of methods, but they were all useless. This is the same as the perfect origin heart force of the 100,000,000 wheels splendor. Only an almighty with tyrannical strength would have the ability to shatter it. An impenetrable barrier. Lin Feng frowned and returned to his original position. In the next moment, he looked directly at one of the eyes of dark malice. His gaze converged, and the eyes of dark malice shone brightly. In an instant, a black shadow appeared in front of him. A spear was imbued with demonic energy and pierced through space. Coiling silk-stacked shadows. Fusing with the City of Will's smash, the phantom spider hand turned into countless coiling threads that wrapped around the spear-wielding black shadow. Lin Feng didn't use the Origin C impact because he didn't know if it would work on illusions. Moreover, controlling objects to attack was more direct. The current power of the Phantom Spider Hand was comparable to a peak Yuan Venerate, so Lin Feng was confident that he could defeat his opponent. After an intense battle, the City of Will once again smashed the opponent unconscious. The coiling threads of the Phantom Spider Hand were like steel wires that directly strangled the black shadow. In an instant, the eyes of dark malice in front of him dimmed. Hua Lin Feng passed without a hitch. Whoosh! Lin Feng entered. It was like a winding path. It wasn't a teleportation path like he had imagined, but a path of the eyes of dark malice. However, the path wasn't long and he soon reached the end. Light flashed. Lin Feng was about to pass through the eyes of dark malice when an invisible energy blocked him. Another barrier. I can't go in? Lin Feng was speechless. It was as if he had punched the air. This barrier was exactly the same as the one on the floating continent outside. To be precise, it was a barrier on the floating continent. Lin Feng stood in front of the barrier. He clearly knew that he was now in the eyes of dark malice. He could see everything on the floating continent outside through the thin layer of the barrier. It was a blue desert with tornadoes wreaking havoc in the desert. A lot of sand condensed into strange life forms that roared and slammed against the ground. Many of them even blasted towards the tornadoes. They were extremely strong and had no soul. It definitely wasn't easy to kill these sand life forms. After observing for a while, Lin Feng immediately retreated. Since he couldn't go in, there was no need to waste time. He tried again with another eyes of dark malice. The second, the third, the fourth, every eyes of dark malice corresponded to a floating continent. Lin Feng tried 5 eyes of dark malice, but the result was the same for every eyes of dark malice. There was a barrier as thin as a cicada's wing that kept him out of the eyes of dark malice. Phew! Lin Feng let out a light sigh. After testing it 5 times, he had a rough understanding of it. The tens of thousands of eyes of dark malice before him were indeed entrances that led to the various levels of the secret realm. At present, it seemed that these countless floating continents were the secret realm created by the 100 million wheel master and were connected by the eyes of dark malice. The way to enter had to be like what he had just tested. However, the secret realm hadn't opened yet. Seems like I came a little early. Besides obtaining some yuan venerate treasures and 100 eyes of samsara, there didn't seem to be any other special benefit. Lin Feng turned his head and looked at the area covered by the 100 million wheel brilliance in the distance, wondering if he should go back and get some more eyes of samsara. In any case, he wouldn't get lost. Entering the range of the 100 million wheel brilliance would not only allow him to absorb perfect source heart force, but also earn some Hongmeng source crystals. The more treasures, the better. When the 100 million wheel brilliance dissipates and all the eyes of dark malice open, the secret realm will open. At that time, I will be the first to enter. Lin Feng's mind was as clear as a mirror. He knew the current situation like the back of his hand. However, even if he was the first to enter, he wouldn't have much of an advantage. Tens of thousands of eyes of dark malice corresponded to tens of thousands of floating continents. Each floating continent was connected to other floating continents through the eyes of dark malice, so it wouldn't be possible to explore them in a short time. Although he had entered first, once the secret realm opened, the other cultivators would rush in and he wouldn't have much of an advantage. What I should do now isn't to earn more Hongmeng source crystals, but to expand my advantage. Lin Feng knew exactly what he had to do. Compared to the treasures in the secret realm, the treasures in the 100 million wheel brilliance weren't worth mentioning. He had to set his sights further. Cultivating during this time would be more useful than searching for treasures. Furthermore, the 10 peak yuan venerates who had been chasing him would also enter when the time came, including the great Ian God of Universe 7's divine tribunal. The secret realm itself was dangerous, and his strength wasn't enough to protect himself. I'll make the best use of this period of safety. Once the secret realm opens, even if I can't be invincible, I'll at least be able to win and have a way out. Lin Feng already had a plan in mind. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website Chapter 2813. Lin Feng naturally didn't plan on cultivating like normal. This was the secret realm at the core of the tomb of 100 million wheels. It was the blood, sweat, and tears of the Lord of 100 million wheels. It was most suitable for cultivating the heavenly Tao of heart force. Moreover, Lin Feng himself was refining a soul-type ultimate chaos treasure. I can use battle to improve my heart force, my understanding of the heavenly Tao, and my willpower. Lin Feng learned from Qiyuzi that the key to the secret realm was heart force and willpower. If he wanted to be like a fish in water in the secret realm, he couldn't lack these two. Moreover, his current environment was most suitable for improving his heart force and willpower. Through the eyes of black malice, not only can I train my willpower, but I can also familiarize myself with the terrain. The last time the secret realm opened was countless epochs ago. There were no records of it in the ancient books, let alone a map. Moreover, very few people had ever left the secret realm alive. Once the arcane realm was opened, the dangers of the arcane realm itself, as well as the battles between other cultivators, would be completely exposed. Lin Feng quickly entered the sixth eye of black malice. The black malice was both real and illusory. Its strength changed according to the cultivator's willpower. If the cultivator's willpower was strong, the black malice would be weak. If the cultivator's willpower was weak, the black malice would be strong. Although Lin Feng's strength was average, especially when his Origin C attacks were useless against the black malice, his willpower was so strong that the black malice couldn't unleash its full strength. Web of Shadows. Every time he used it in battle, he would improve his mastery of the Phantom Spider Hand. Increasing his strength in battle was what Lin Feng was most proficient at and used most often. After killing the Black Malice, he would enter the Eye of Black Malice, which led to one of the floating continents. There were all kinds of floating continents of strange shapes and sizes. There were blue deserts, yellow clouds, inverted mountains, and densely packed grids. These floating continents didn't seem to be naturally formed, but they were created. The world of heart force, the world of willpower. These floating continents were all created by the Lord of 100,000,000 Wheels. Lin Feng could see the tip of the iceberg of each floating continent through the membrane. While he was admiring the beautiful scenery, a beam of light in the distance attracted his attention. That's... Lin Feng focused his gaze. Although the light was very small and weak, that was because it was far away. If it was close enough, it would most likely be one of them. Treasure. Although he didn't know what kind of treasure it was, Lin Feng was certain. This was because this dot of light was very abrupt in this floating continent. It was very likely that it was a treasure. Oh! Lin Feng fell into deep thought. He took a deep look at the location of the light spot and then retreated from the black eyes of killing intent. If there was one, there would be two. If there were two, there would be three. Ever since the first time he saw the light spot, every time he entered the eye of dark killing intent to observe the floating land, Lin Feng became even more attentive. He did not let go of any clues, and as expected, he found many clues. The light spots of distant treasures were the most common. There were also more subtle clues. Of course, there were also very obvious ones, such as this floating continent that looked like a whirlpool world. Hongmeng origin crystals. Lin Feng opened his eyes wide and looked at the floating continent through the barrier. On the continent there were large and small whirlpools. In the center of each whirlpool were some fragments. At a glance, it was not surprising. But upon closer inspection, they were actually Hongmeng origin crystals. As far as the eye could see, there were more than 100 Hongmeng origin crystals. It was difficult to estimate how many Hongmeng origin crystals there were on the floating continent. 109. Lin Feng retreated from the eye of dark killing intent and memorized it deeply. He had been in the secret realm for a while now. Out of the tens of thousands of eyes of killing intent, 109 of them were less than 1%. But he had already found 4 special ones. In Lin Feng's opinion, there were definitely more treasures in the eye of killing intent than these 4 floating continents. However, he was certain that there were treasures on these 4 floating continents, and he knew the location of these treasures. Following the sequence, Lin Feng continued to enter the next eye of dark malice. Although he was unable to truly enter the floating continent due to the barrier, once the secret world opened, Lin Feng would be able to enter each eye of dark malice that contained treasures through his memories. Time. Compared to other peak Yuan venerates, Lin Feng had a lot more time, even if he was on the same starting line. Furthermore, other peak Yuan venerates had to defeat the Black Fiends before they could enter the Eye of Killing Intent. After entering the floating continent, they would search for treasures. However, they wouldn't know the location of the treasures. How many Yuan venerates would enter the Eye of Killing Intent that contained tens of thousands of Eyes of Killing Intent? Many floating continents would be empty for a period of time, and no Yuan venerates would enter. There are about 3,000 Yuan venerates outside. However, as time passes, the number of Yuan venerates will increase. Lin Feng knew this very well. News of the treasure being unearthed had already spread. However, it would take a considerable amount of time to enter the 100,000,000 wheel tomb from the 100,000,000 wheel origin realm and reach the core area. Furthermore, one had to be strong enough to pass through the golden eye samsara. Thus, the number of Yuan venerates wouldn't increase too much. Hurry up! The more Eye of Killing Intent I enter, the more I will gain. If I am familiar with the route, I will have a better chance of exploring the secret realm. In the core area of the 100,000,000 wheel tomb. Daoistan. It's actually Daoistan. He came really quickly. This is getting interesting. The competition is getting more and more intense. Another top powerhouse had arrived. Daoisten, who came from the Dao Yen Palace, held a horsetail whisk in his hand and smiled. He seemed harmless, but he made Great King Green Hammer and Heavenly King Zhao Kuei feel as if they were facing a formidable enemy, just like Muzan and the elites of the 13th Legion. The Dao Yen Palace was a superforce in the Taichu origin realm that wasn't inferior to the army. Daoist An's reputation was comparable to Zhu Ying's. Heh. I've waited so long for the secret realm to open. How could I miss such a grand occasion? Daoist An smiled as he stroked his mustache. A bright light flashed through his small eyes. He was a top-notch mind cultivator. He had been yearning for the 100 million Luan Tomb's secret realm for a long time. After Daoist An's arrival, some other top powerhouses arrived one after another. Although none of them could compare to Daoist An, the number of Yuan Venerate powerhouses in the second echelon was increasing. Furthermore, the vast majority of them were mind cultivators. The top mind cultivators of the Taichu origin realm paid a lot of attention to the 100 million Luan Tomb's secret realm, as it was a sacred ground for mind cultivators. Why hasn't the 100 million Luan radiance dissipated yet? Yeah, more and more powerhouses are arriving. If we wait any longer, we won't have a place to stand. Soon. Look, the 100 million Luan radiance is already showing signs of dissipating. That's right. More than 99% of the eye of killing intent outside have already opened. Don't worry, everyone. The secret realm is about to open. All the Yuan Venerate powerhouses were anxious and expectant. They were afraid of falling behind, but they were also afraid that there would be too many competitors. Seeing the 100 million Luan radiance but not being able to enter made them feel like they were suffering. Chapter 28:14. The barrier seems to be getting thinner. Lin Feng had a clear feeling every time he entered the dark fiendish eye. Although it was getting thinner, the essence of the barrier hadn't changed. Lin Feng had tried to penetrate it but still couldn't cross this layer of barrier. After all, the perfect source heart force that formed the barrier was too strong. 99:21. This was the 9,921 dark fiendish eyes that Lin Feng had entered. There were more than 30,000 dark fiendish eyes in total, so he had explored nearly 1/3 of them. His harvest was naturally not small. He could see a total of 137 treasures. However, some of them were Hongmeng source crystals, special metals, and other things that he couldn't use for the time being. There were also some that he wasn't sure about. There were 81 treasures that could be confirmed. This number was already quite astonishing. I'll make a big profit if I can get 10 of these 81 treasures. Lin Feng didn't expect to get too many. After all, these treasures could be seen with the naked eye. As long as a Yuan Venerate powerhouse entered the floating continent, they would be able to discover them at a glance. When the time came, 10,000 Yuan Venerate powerhouses might arrive. 1/3 of the 30,000 dark fiendish eyes would be occupied in an instant. He was confident that he could get the first few treasures. However, the more the floating continent was explored, the more difficult it would be to get the treasures. Furthermore, this was the ideal situation. Once the secret realm opened, battles would be inevitable. He would have two enemies. One was the Divine Tribunal of Universe 7, and the other was the 10 Yuan Venerate powerhouses that had chased him into the 100 million wheels. Once they met, a battle would ensue. The first few treasures I get are the most important. Lin Feng had already planned for these 81 treasures. The first few treasures were not only the most valuable but also the most suitable for him. It would be great if the all-encompassing technique could refine the Source Spirit Impact treasure in time. There still wasn't enough time. The Source Spirit Impact treasure was a supreme chaotic treasure of a high grade. It would take a considerable amount of time to refine it, but Lin Feng had also made great progress during this period of fighting in the dark fiendish eyes. 9,921 dark fiendish eyes. 9,921 battles. His control and control of the perfect source heart force had reached a whole new level. Of the two forms of the city of will, Smash had reached perfection, and Trap had reached great mastery. But this was not the biggest improvement. His greatest improvement was his perfect control over his origin soul power. He had fully grasped the second level of the Supreme Chaos Treasure Phantom Spider-Hand in the 200th battle, and perfectly grasped the third level of the 100 Spiders Ambush in the 6,627th battle. As of now, he was already able to execute the fourth stage of the illusory spider imprisonment. The third stage, the 100 Spiders Surprise Attack, required perfect control of one's origin soul power to be 100 times that of an elementary Yuan Venerate. The fourth level, Illusory Spider Imprisonment, required a perfect control of origin soul power that was 300 times that of an elementary Yuan Venerate. If I didn't have perfect control over my origin heart force, my origin soul force would be able to perfectly execute the second stage of the Coiling Silk Overlapping Shadows. However, I wouldn't be able to execute the 100 Spiders Surprise Attack. The improvement of his perfect control over his origin soul power was not something that could be achieved overnight. Lin Feng had experienced close to 10,000 battles. At the very beginning, his control had only reached 10 times. Now it was close to 50 times. The improvement was not small, but there was still a big gap between his control and that of a true peak Yuan Venerate. However, his perfect origin heart force not only made up for all of this, but it also greatly exceeded it. This was an improvement in his combat strength. As for the non-combat strength improvement, his willpower had also undergone a transformation. In the 8,860th battle, his willpower had improved like a cocoon breaking out of a cocoon. After the transformation, he had entered the dark fiendish eyes again, leaving him with only 10% of his original strength. The stronger his willpower, the weaker he became. My willpower was comparable to a top-notch almighty before. Now it should have reached the level of an extraordinary almighty. Although this was not an improvement in his combat strength, willpower was closely related to mental cultivation. Furthermore, this was a world of mental cultivation, and the master of 100 million wheels was a top-notch mental cultivator. There were only advantages and no disadvantages to the sublimation of his willpower. According to Qi Yuzi, there are more than 10 peak Yuan Venerates outside whose willpower has reached the level of a top-notch almighty. Apart from me, there are at most 1 or 2 extraordinary almighties. In Lin Feng's opinion, combat strength was secondary in the secret realm. Willpower was the most important. For example, the dark fiendish willpower had reached the level of a top-notch almighty and an extraordinary almighty. The other Yuan Venerates whose willpower has yet to reach the level of a top-notch almighty might encounter a dark fiendish 10 times stronger than the one I encountered before. It won't be easy to get through. This was probably why Qi Yuzi had said that Yuan Venerates with weak willpower would find it difficult to even protect themselves in the secret realm. A dark fiendish that was 10 times stronger than the dark fiendish Luo Yunyang had encountered before, or a dark fiendish whose willpower was a little weaker. What kind of concept was that? Could kill him instantly. It's almost here. Lin Feng made use of the time to make his final exploration. Dark fiendish eyes entered one after another. When the number of dark fiendish eyes reached 9,999, the light of the barrier flickered continuously and the perfect origin heart force appeared. The 10,000 dark fiendish eyes. After Lin Feng finished exploring the last dark fiendish eye, he stopped and entered the 1,244th dark fiendish eye in his memory. He waited patiently in front of the barrier that was on the verge of collapse. The treasure in the distance wasn't the most valuable treasure, but Lin Feng believed that it was the most suitable treasure for him among the 81 treasures. In the core region of the 100 million wheel tomb, More than 6,000 yuan venerate powerhouses held their breaths and secretly accumulated power. The radiance of the 100 million wheel tomb had already started to fade, and the dark fiendish eyes outside were almost fully opened. The secret realm was about to open. Previously, some yuan venerates had thought that a treasure had been unearthed. However, as more and more cultivators arrived, the 100 million wheel tomb's secret realm was no longer a secret. This was undoubtedly great news for those mediocre peak yuan venerates. Their chances of obtaining a treasure were very slim. However, no one knew what kind of treasures were hidden in the secret realm, which was a realm within a realm established by the 100 million wheel master. All yuan venerates would have a chance to obtain a great opportunity. Whoosh, whoosh. The radiance of the 100 million wheel tomb transformed into streams of light as the perfect source heart force gradually dissipated. Every yuan venerate powerhouse's eyes were filled with intense battle intent and ambition. But the last eye of the dark fiendish eye opened like a password had been unlocked. In an instant, the 100 million wheel tomb rumbled violently. The shocking vibrations caused the 100 million wheel tomb to collapse and the perfect source heart force to scatter. A spectacle suddenly appeared in the void. It was an incomparably tall figure, wearing a set of exquisite battle armor. The figure held a battle axe in its hand, looking down at the little ones. Its eyes shone brightly, flickering with starlight. "Come," a majestic voice seemed to come from the endless horizon, echoing back and forth. It went straight to the depths of one's soul. The power of a mind cultivator was extremely terrifying. As long as he wanted to, he could even shatter the souls of all yuan venerates. This was the power of a universe ruler. Yuan venerates were like thousands of ants in front of him. Boom! The radiance dissipated and the secret realm descended. Chapter 28:15. Be honest, Xiao Xiao went out for Christmas. Blade shatters the Milky Way, wishes everyone a Merry Christmas. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 28:16. Whoosh! Before Lin Feng's eyes, the thin barrier dissipated like smoke and dust. His perfect source heart force merged with the realm, and the floating continent was no longer obstructed. The door opened wide, and the mysterious world of the floating continent unfolded like a painting outside the black eyes of killing intent. The secret realm has opened. Lin Feng had already rushed toward his target the moment the barrier disappeared. That was the most suitable treasure for him among the 81 treasures. The Hongmeng fruit. Lin Feng didn't lack treasures, mystic techniques, inheritances, and so on. What he lacked was time, top-notch treasures that could steadily increase his combat strength and strength. So what if he had more Hongmeng source items? If he couldn't use them, they would just be decorations. Among the 81 treasures, 2 of them were suspected to be Hongmeng source items. However, Lin Feng had chosen the Hongmeng fruit. The greatest value of a treasure wasn't its value in the secular sense, but its applicability to the user and its importance in the current era. Under normal circumstances, giving a yuan venerate a melee Hongmeng weapon would be beneficial. Even if he couldn't use it, he could still exchange it for something else. However, in a life-and-death situation, it wasn't even as good as a supreme chaotic treasure armor. The latter could at least resist damage and protect his life. This was the case for Lin Feng now. Lin Feng didn't just urgently need the Hongmeng fruit, but he also craved it. After all, this was a super treasure that could directly increase his combat strength. Refining a Hongmeng source item might help him increase his strength far more than a Hongmeng fruit. However, even if there were 10 Hongmeng source items in front of him right now, Lin Feng wouldn't hesitate to choose a Hongmeng fruit. In particular, this Hongmeng fruit was a soul-type Hongmeng fruit. Crack! Lin Feng swallowed and refined it the moment he got his hands on it. Rich source spirit energy surged into his source sea, setting off monstrous waves. While refining his perfect source spirit, it also expanded his source sea to the limit. Whoosh! Whoosh! The energy was endless. A small Hongmeng fruit had an astonishing amount of energy. Although Lin Feng was mentally prepared, he still underestimated the power of this Hongmeng fruit. That feeling was as if what you thought was a stream was actually a river, or even, it was a huge lake. So fast. Lin Feng sensed that the origin sea had expanded by a third in almost an instant, and it didn't slow down in the slightest. By the time it left the floating continent and returned to the black fiendish eye, it had already expanded by 2/3. Whoosh! Lin Feng came out of the black fiendish eye. At this time, the source sea had more than doubled in size. It was double the original amount. What did that mean? It was equivalent to Lin Feng's current origin sea attack, and its power had at least doubled. 4367, here. Lin Feng didn't have time to think about how much energy this Hongmeng fruit had, because he knew very well that it was a race against time. Even if it was just a second, he might be able to obtain one more treasure. Lin Feng had passed through all 10,000 black fiendish eyes, so he didn't need to fight with the black fiends and could directly enter, saving a lot of time. The most time-saving thing was to choose and choose. In Lin Feng's mind, the corresponding black fiendish eyes of 81 treasures were clearly distributed, like a map. The position of the first Hongmeng fruit was in the 1244th black fiendish eye, and the position of the second Hongmeng fruit was in the 4367th black fiendish eye. That's right, Lin Feng still chose the Hongmeng fruit. Lin Feng was still refining the origin soul type ultimate chaos treasure. He didn't need too many other treasures at the moment, and the Hongmeng fruit was what Lin Feng needed the most, especially the origin soul type Hongmeng fruit. Swoosh! Lin Feng entered the second floating land, which was a white pearl field. Transparent pearls covered the ground, and the pearls were like butterflies in the void. These pearls were moving slowly, like small snails. Among these strange pearls, there was a Hongmeng fruit that was very similar in color to the pearls, and it was the one Lin Feng was coveting. The Hongmeng fruit. Got it. Lin Feng took the pearl Hongmeng fruit and put it into his bag. He didn't refine it immediately. Different Hongmeng fruits might conflict with each other, which would affect the refining process. Refining a Hongmeng fruit didn't take too much time, and Lin Feng naturally had the patience. Let's go. Lin Feng immediately headed for the third dark eye. Lin Feng didn't slow down at all as he plucked the Hongmeng fruit. He used his perfect movement technique to avoid the shifting pearls in the void and flew as nimbly as a swallow. Lin Feng had already familiarized himself with the environment here and simulated it countless times in his mind. The endless pearls floating in the void seemed inconspicuous, like a slow roadblock, but they were actually very dangerous. Although each pearl was small in size, it was extremely heavy. Crashing into one would be no different from being bombarded by a peak Yuan venerate. Even an almighty wouldn't be able to smash them into pieces. Lin Feng had observed 10,000 dark eyes, and there were all kinds of geographical environments. This floating land wasn't the most wonderful one, nor was it the most special one. However, it was the one that possessed the Hongmeng fruit. Therefore, Lin Feng spent some time here observing and making sufficient preparations. The third dark eye. Quick! Lin Feng could already feel the pressure. It didn't come from the secret realm, but from outside. It was an enormous pressure, like the calm before a storm. It was as if a massive tsunami would arrive in the next second. Lin Feng knew very well what the opening of the secret realm meant. The thousands of peak Yuan venerates outside would rush in frantically. This was the 100 million wheel tomb's secret realm, a world created by the Almighty, the 100 million wheel master. It contained the secrets and treasures of the universe's rulers. Even an Almighty would covet it, let alone a Yuan venerate powerhouse. However, Almighties couldn't enter. Because of this, the other peak Yuan venerates would go crazy. The third one. Lin Feng calmly took the third Hongmeng fruit. Among the 81 confirmed treasures, there were 23 Hongmeng fruit. Hongmeng fruits were the easiest to be born in the secret realm. However, there were only 2 Hongmeng fruits that were origin source souls. The third Hongmeng fruit was a mind cultivation fruit. In terms of pure energy intensity and value, this Hongmeng fruit was probably the most vigorous and abundant of the 3 Hongmeng fruits Lin Feng had obtained. It was also the one with the highest grade. After all, the 100 million wheel tomb was a mind cultivation world. The most abundant energy there was perfect source heart force. However, Lin Feng urgently needed to improve his origin source soul, followed by perfect source heart force. Alright. Lin Feng put the third heart Hongmeng fruit into his bag and quickly returned with a smile. His previous plan had been to obtain the 3 most important Hongmeng fruits before the army arrived. His goal had been achieved perfectly. Chapter 28:17. Whoosh. Lin Feng left the third black eye of killing intent. Aura! Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat as his eyes lit up. The astonishing aura was already pouring over. Even if he didn't try to sense it, he could sense that the Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the entrance of the secret realm were rushing over in a frenzy. They might arrive in the next instant. 9019. Lin Feng went straight for the other black eye of killing intent. He had already simulated this scene countless times in his mind, including the arrival of other Yuan Venerate powerhouses after he took the second treasure, the arrival of Yuan Venerate powerhouses after he took the third treasure, and so on. The fourth treasure. Lin Feng could continue to choose a Hongmeng fruit, but there were no more origin source fruit. Most of the remaining fruits were mind cultivation fruit. Of course, there were also body origin source fruits, but Lin Feng didn't choose this one. Choosing a Hongmeng fruit with body origin source fruits wouldn't help his current combat strength. Choosing a mind cultivation fruit was indeed beneficial to his combat strength. Moreover, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Compared to taking a treasure that only had future value, the mind cultivation fruit was undoubtedly better. However, Lin Feng didn't choose a mind cultivation Hongmeng fruit this time. There are many mind cultivation Hongmeng fruit. Besides the one I just obtained, the quality of the others isn't too different. The Hongmeng fruit he had just obtained was different from the other mind cultivation Hongmeng fruit. It had the most abundant energy and the highest grade. It was of a higher grade than the first and second origin source fruits Lin Feng had obtained. Just like the chaotic ultimate treasure, the other Hongmeng fruits were only chaotic ultimate treasures. Only this one, it was a Hongmeng source item. Lin Feng had a lot of choices for mind cultivation Hongmeng fruit. Even if Yuan Venerate powerhouses swarmed in later, they wouldn't be able to take away all the mind cultivation Hongmeng fruits in his memory. However, there were only 2 that were suspected to be Hongmeng source items. Although Hongmeng's origin items might not have any value in the current situation, it was only a possibility. After obtaining enough Hongmeng fruits that he wanted, Lin Feng decisively chose the 2 most valuable treasures out of all the 81 treasures in the auction. Pitter-patter-patter. Blue drizzles were falling from the sky, making the whole sky look blue and dreamy. Every drop of rain that fell on the body would make a sizzling sound, because these raindrops were highly corrosive. In order to travel through this void land, one must have a strong enough defense. Lin Feng's defense was not strong. It could even be said that he was very weak. However, he didn't need to stay on this piece of land for too long. He only needed to obtain a treasure that he wanted. It was a small blue umbrella that stood quietly on the monument amidst the drizzle. It looked unremarkable, but it had protected the monument from the corrosion of the blue raindrops for countless years. Was it a Hongmeng source? It really is. Lin Feng felt an abundance of Hongmeng energy the moment he got hold of the small blue umbrella. Wisps of Hongmeng energy flowed within the small blue umbrella as if they were flowing in blood. This was a pure Hongmeng source. It should be a defensive type. Lin Feng held the small blue umbrella. He wasn't surprised or overjoyed. Everything was within his expectations, even though this was the first Hongmeng source he had truly obtained. It's not completely useless. At the very least, defensive treasures can be used directly. Lin Feng held the small blue umbrella up against the drizzling blue rain, completely unaffected by the corrosion of the raindrop. At the very least, the small blue umbrella had an extraordinary effect in this geographical environment. Whoosh! Lin Feng returned to the dark fiend eye and put away the small blue umbrella. He couldn't show off his wealth. The Peak Yuan venerates who had come weren't to be trifled with. Many of them were old foxes with rich experience. If they saw him, their sharp eyes would see right through him. Many Peak Yuan venerates would fight to the death for a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. A Hongmeng source. Anyone who got their hands on it would really be in high demand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As the secret realm descended, the entrance passage opened. Yuan venerate powerhouses turned into streaks of light and sped away. If they were fighting over the treasures now, it would definitely be a bloodbath. However, it was strangely peaceful at the moment. There was only the sound of people hurtling through the air, and there was no bloodshed. This was because a large number of mental cultivators had come before the secret realm descended, so there were no more secrets in the secret realm. Heavenly King Zhaoque told him everything he knew about the secret realm. Since there were no more secrets to speak of, Heavenly King Zhaoque was naturally happy to do a favor and win people over. There were many treasures in the secret realm. Who would still fight at the entrance of the secret realm? Who would still waste time competing here? Everyone who could come here had a few tricks up their sleeves. Naturally, they wouldn't be so stupid. The biggest threats are Ming Ying and Endowran. Heavenly King Zhaoque's speed wasn't considered fast, but he had a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. Coupled with his outstanding strength, he was currently in the first echelon. At the front of the pack were Great King Green Hammer, Endowran, and the elite team of 13 Corps led by Musen. Many of the Yuan venerate powerhouses behind them had stronger origin source bodies and higher attainments in space. Although they were faster than Great King Green Hammer, Heavenly King Zhaoque, and the others, they didn't surpass them. It would be too stupid to do that. If they weren't as strong as others, it would be better to keep a low profile. Furthermore, if there were any dangers in the secret realm, the first to bear the brunt of the danger would definitely be the Yuan venerates at the front. There were many treasures in the secret realm, and this was the first time everyone had entered. What was the point of fighting over time? After entering the secret realm, it wasn't about who was faster. Instead, it was about who was stronger and who had better luck. Among the Yuan venerate powerhouses in the second echelon, there were a few whose strength wasn't inferior to Heavenly King Zhaoque's. There were also many mental cultivators. Perhaps their strength was slightly inferior, but they were undoubtedly more at home in the secret realm. However, no one knew who would have the last laugh. The 100 million wheel tomb had opened twice, and less than 1 out of 100 people had made it out alive. The dangers inside were unpredictable. Lin Feng isn't dead yet. Eternal Ian God was also in the second echelon. Although he looked calm, Eternal Ian God Xing Jin's death had made him very vigilant. Lin Feng's strength was stronger than he had imagined. Eternal Ian God had arrived after Lin Feng had been chased into the 100 million wheel radiance by 13 Corps. He was a little surprised when he first heard this, but he knew very well that Lin Feng wasn't dead, even though the cultivators who entered the 100 million wheel radiance had always died. However, the will of the heavenly great path wouldn't lie. This kid's life is really long. Eternal Ian God's deep gaze landed in front of him. His black, fiendish eyes were faintly visible. He hadn't expected that he would coincidentally encounter the opening of the 100 million wheel tomb. In the Origin universe, Eternal Ian God was considered invincible. Here, Eternal Ian God's strength was also top-notch. He was one of the powerhouses in the second echelon who were keeping a low profile. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 28:18. Chi. Like a sharp knife tearing through space, the thin figure in the black cloak was Meng Ying, who was feared by all Yuan venerate powerhouses in the 100 million wheel tomb. His speed was the fastest among all Yuan venerate powerhouses. From the moment they had descended from the secret realm, Jian Ying had already rushed to the forefront. He had this speed, strength, and confidence. Countless black fiendish eyes entered his line of sight. The 100 million wheel tomb's secret realm had already appeared. Meng Ying was about to barge into one of them when suddenly, one of the black fiendish eyes changed and a figure leaped out. Meng Ying's pupils constricted rapidly as a murderous intent appeared. He turned the black dagger in his hand without any hesitation and darted forward like a pitch-black poisonous snake. Their eyes met for a split second before the figure leaped into the black fiendish eye. Meng Ying's black knife sliced through space but had already lost its target. It's him. Meng Ying's mind raced as he recalled the figure from just now. Meng Ying had a cold expression on his face and a black cloak covering his thin figure like a king of the darkness. Before the group of Yuan venerate powerhouses behind him arrived, Meng Ying entered one of the black fiendish eyes. He actually didn't die? Heavenly King Zhaoque also saw Lin Feng. He was only half a beat slower than Meng Ying. When Meng Ying saw Lin Feng leap out of the black fiendish eye, he was shocked to see Lin Feng's full appearance. This was the first cultivator he knew who had entered the 100 million wheel brilliance and not died. Is he special, or is the 100 million wheel brilliance not that dangerous? There was no detailed information about the opening of the 100 million wheel tomb's secret realm. The last time it opened was countless epochs ago, and all the cultivators who had entered the 100 million wheel brilliance had died without exception. Thus, all the Yuan venerate powerhouses believed that it was impossible to enter before the 100 million wheel brilliance dissipated. However, Lin Feng's appearance at the moment overturned Heavenly King Zhaoque's thoughts. Heavenly King Zhaoque had a deep impression of Lin Feng, not only because he was the only Huang Zun, but also because of the continuous battles in the core area of the 100 million wheel tomb. First, he had killed a peak Yuan venerate from the Divine Tribunal and then been chased down by the 13 Corps. It was hard not to remember. Even after Lin Feng was chased into the 100 million wheel splendor, the cultivators were still talking about him enthusiastically. Come into contact with it. Heavenly King Zhaoque already had a plan in his mind. He scanned through the tens of thousands of eyes of black killing intent, and his eyes lit up. He entered this eye of black killing intent. Whoosh! Heavenly King Zhaoque immediately followed. Interesting, there's actually a little guy who beat me to it. Daoistan smiled as he entered another eye of black killing intent. He didn't have as many thoughts as Heavenly King Zhaoque. To Daoistan, he just wanted to walk his own path and find his own opportunities. A cultivator of the mind would follow his heart. He would not be envious of other people's fortuitous encounters and would only focus on himself. This brat has profited from a disaster. His luck is much better than mine. The Green Hammer King carried the green-purple giant hammer as he led his subordinates and laughed out loud. Every step he took caused the space to tremble violently. He was like an immovable mountain. Although Lin Feng had only appeared for a moment, the first batch of Yuan venerate powerhouses had all seen him. Captain, he's not dead. The vice-captain of the 13th Division, Ming Shi, exclaimed. I know. Muzin's eyes shone brightly. Not only was he not disappointed or shocked, but he was also overjoyed. They were carrying out the mission of the Taichu generals. Although bringing Lin Feng's corpse back was barely enough to complete the mission, it was still a far cry from capturing him alive. Lin Feng's survival was no different from obtaining a Hongmeng source item. Which eye of black killing intent did he just enter? Although Muzin was also in the first echelon, he was actually half a step behind Heavenly King Zhaoque and the other powerhouses because they were moving together. They had seen Lin Feng, but they weren't sure which eye of black killing intent Lin Feng had entered. They only knew the approximate area. 9 eyes of black killing intent, split up. Muzin made a prompt decision as he pointed his giant sword in the air. The possibility of him entering one of the 9 eyes of black killing intent was the highest. Yes, Captain. The elite warriors of the 13th Legion immediately moved. The powerhouses in the first echelon could still see Lin Feng, but the Yuan venerates in the second echelon could only see a blurry shadow that disappeared in a flash. Furthermore, only the Yuan venerates at the front of the second echelon could see him. It should be him. The eternal Aeon God held the scepter in his hand as the giant wheel of time behind him rotated. There was only one possibility, regardless of whether he was sensing or speculating. My luck seems to be a little bad. Lin Feng was also feeling helpless as he sped through the Eye of Dark Fiendish passageway. He had just leaped out of the Eye of Dark Fiendish when he had been caught red-handed by the Yuan Venerate powerhouses. If a large number of Yuan Venerates had already entered the Eye of Black Killing Intent, his appearance wouldn't have been so eye-catching. But now there was no turning back. Lin Feng still had a fresh memory of that hellish black murderous aura. He was certain that if he had entered the Eye of Black Killing Intent a little later, he would have been killed by that demonic black dagger. Is he Jianing? How formidable! This was the first time Lin Feng had truly clashed with Jianing. Previously, he had heard from Qi Yuzi how formidable Jianing was. Indeed, he lived up to his reputation. It's not just his strength. His willpower isn't inferior to mine. Lin Feng's willpower had already reached the level of an extraordinary almighty and was a level higher than Qi Yuzi, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo, and other powerhouses. Only Taoist and could compare in the 100 million Wheel Tomb mystic realm. However, Jianing wasn't a mind cultivator. Try not to provoke him before you are strong enough. Lin Feng exited the Eye of Black Killing Intent with a whoosh. This time, he didn't just see Jianing. He also saw Great King Green Hammer, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo, and the other first-tier powerhouses that Qi Yuzi had mentioned. Among them, there was an unfamiliar Taoist priest, who should have arrived later. However, if he could be on the same level as Jianing and the others, his strength must be extraordinary. They are also here. Lin Feng didn't see the eternal Aeon God, but Muzin and the elites of the 13th Legion, who had fallen behind Great King Green Hammer, saw them clearly. Previously, he had been chased very pathetically. A fierce battle is unavoidable. However, I don't need to be afraid of them here. Although Lin Feng didn't have the geographical advantage in the mystic realm, with so many floating continents and so many eyes of black killing intent, it wouldn't be easy for them to catch him. Lin Feng naturally wasn't afraid of a one-on-one battle. After 10,000 battles with the black killing intent, his strength had increased by a lot. Moreover, he had refined the origin soul-type Hongmeng fruit and reached a higher level. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The moment he was about to obtain the treasure, his heart skipped a beat. The entire source sea suddenly calmed down, as if time had stopped at that moment. The Hongmeng fruit couldn't expand the source sea at all. The energy froze. Limit. The source sea had reached its limit. Genius remembered this address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2819. Lin Feng had been persevering all this time. Even though he had encountered danger time and time again, he had not broken through to the source sea. Given his willpower and perfect source core force, he could completely replace his source soul to control the source sea's transformation. After the 10,000 battles with the Black Fiend, his control over his source soul had improved tremendously and he could complete the transformation without relying on mental cultivation. However, Lin Feng resisted. He did not want to sacrifice his potential in exchange for temporary strength. Ever since he had become an Origin Chaos Venerate, Lin Feng had only one goal: to become a true powerhouse, a top-notch powerhouse in the universe. Even after entering the Hongmeng Sea and seeing so many talented cultivators in the Taichu Origin Chaos universe, His mindset had not changed. On the contrary, it had made his fighting spirit even higher. No matter how many powerhouses there were, he wanted to be one of them, the strongest one. Break. This time, Lin Feng did not hesitate. The energy of the Hongmeng fruit still remained, so this was the best time to break through. Although it might take some time, thousands of Yuan venerate powerhouses had entered the mystic realm and the situation had changed greatly. Only with sufficient combat strength could he protect himself. What was the use of having so many treasures? If he could not beat others, he would end up benefiting others. Lin Feng saw through it very clearly. Boom! Boom! The source sea shook violently and waves surged. The energy of the source sea suddenly changed. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. With the replenishment of the Hongmeng fruit's abundant energy, he could also save a lot of great source soul fruits to replenish the energy of the source sea. His mind was focused and his willpower was tenacious. The perfect source core force was activated and used at the same time as the control of his source soul. Not only was it foolproof, but it also made the transformation perfect and accelerated. The source sea was the standard for a one-thought supreme venerate. The perfect source sea was the standard for a one-thought supreme venerate. The reason Lin Feng's source sea was so strong was not because the quality of the source sea's energy was better than other cultivators, but because the quantity was huge. Lin Feng's source sea was rather majestic and much larger than that of a one-thought supreme venerate. Moreover, there was also an ultimate technique and will impact, so its power was naturally shocking. Now, the Hongmeng fruit had expanded his source sea by 6 times, reaching the limit of what his internal universe could contain. Then, it would transform into the perfect source sea, which would be even more majestic than normal, and its upper limit would be even higher. After the metamorphosis, the number of great origin soul fruits consumed would increase sharply, and the energy consumption would be several times greater than before. But it was worth it. After the transformation, the impact of the origin sea would become even more terrifying. Now that they were surrounded by enemies, pure combat power was much more important than endurance. Lin Feng still had a lot of great origin soul fruit. And where was this place? Would there be a shortage of Hongmeng fruits in the secret realm? Of the 10,000 dark eyes that Lin Feng had peeped, although he had only confirmed 81 treasures, Lin Feng was very clear about the characteristics of the floating continent. Many of them might have soul-type Hongmeng fruits, but he had not been able to see them because of the barrier. Is this the secret realm? It's so strange. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo, who was wearing a blue light armor, followed Lin Feng to this floating continent. Unlike Lin Feng, this was his first time entering the secret realm, and he felt that it was very mysterious and strange. The black fiends that entered the dark eyes could not stop Heavenly King Zhao Kuo and were instantly killed. Everything here is upside down. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo looked around and felt a little confused. The mountains were upside down, the water was upside down, and even the waterfall was upside down. It felt like the floating continent was not upside down, but he himself was upside down. It was very strange. What is he doing? Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was, after all, a veteran. He quickly regained his composure and instantly sensed Lin Feng's location. Lin Feng had not gone far. After all, he had discovered the treasure in the dark eyes that day, so how far could he see? Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's gaze fell on Lin Feng. Seeing that Lin Feng had stopped in place, as if he was in an illusion, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo immediately became vigilant. Strange. The 2 spiral horns on Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's forehead glowed faintly as he paid attention to the changes in his surroundings. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was extremely cautious when he first entered the secret realm. This was also his way of doing things. It was better to be safe than sorry. He moved. Has he left the illusion? This Huang Zun's human willpower is very strong. In this place, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo could sense Lin Feng's willpower and heart cultivation. Although Huang Zun's strength was ordinary, The strength of his willpower made Heavenly King Zhao Kuo sigh in amazement. In his opinion, Lin Feng definitely had secret. Whoosh! Heavenly King Zhao Kuo quickly followed Lin Feng. Suddenly, the two spiral horns flashed. That was a sensitive reaction to energy. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's pupils suddenly widened as he looked in the direction Lin Feng was rushing. What did he see? Hongming's source item. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo instantly felt suffocated as his mind went blank. Seeing Lin Feng casually put away the Hongming source item, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo finally reacted. What did he miss? Heavens! An incomparably precious Hongming source item. He seems to know that there are treasures here. No matter how calm Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was, he was somewhat flustered. His first reaction was to kill Lin Feng and seize the treasure, but his second reaction was to forcefully suppress it. Reason prevailed over impulse. First, he could defeat this Huang Zun human, but he might not necessarily be able to kill him. Previously, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo did not have full confidence in killing this Huang Zun human, even when the 13 Corps led by Muzin had a total of 10 experts, but they were still unable to kill this Huang Zun human. Second, he felt that this Huang Zun human had secret. What was the first reaction of an ordinary Huang Zun human after finding a Hongming source item? Surprise? Excitement? Bewilderment? All sorts of reactions were possible. However, this Huang Zun human had acted swiftly and calmly, as if he had taken a treasure that belonged to him. There was not even the slightest fluctuation in his emotions. After entering, he had immediately found the Hongming source item, taken it, and left. Could there be such a coincidence? Cooperate with him. Reason told Heavenly King Zhao Kuo that this was the best way to go. It did not matter even if he offended 13 Corps Muzin for Lin Feng. I am Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. Little brother, please wait. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo smiled and transmitted his voice when he saw Lin Feng rushing over. He had the faint image of an emperor, and his sonorous and powerful words were trustworthy. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo had a good reputation among the Yuan venerates of the 100 million wheel tomb and was extremely capable of leading. I wonder if little brother, before Heavenly King Zhao Kuo could finish his sentence, the figure in front of him had already disappeared like the wind, leaving Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's raised right hand in the air. The smile on his face froze. Gone? Gone? Gone just like that? He had been treated like air. The veins on Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's forehead bulged. He had always been revered by cultivators, but he had never imagined that he would be disregarded like this one day. Furthermore, it had been by this little fellow Huang Zun. Bastard! Heavenly King Zhao Kuo cursed under his breath as his expression changed. However, he recovered his stiff smile in an instant and chased after Luo Yunyang. Little brother, wait! Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website, M. Chapter 2820. Lin Feng ignored Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. No matter what his goal was, it was not important at the moment. After the transformation of his source C, the remaining energy of the Hongming fruit was continuously replenishing his new source C. Lin Feng's strength had greatly increased. How could the impact of an ordinary source C compare to the impact of a perfect source C? The difference between the two was huge. Moreover, the transformation of the perfect source C affected the entire situation, causing the perfect source soul to become stronger. His ability to control objects also increased significantly. Although this treasure is a Hongming source item, it's a pity that it's damaged. Lin Feng had obtained something from the reflection of the floating continent, but visual inspection was different from personal inspection. This Hongming source item had obvious flaws. It contained Hongming energy, but it was seriously damaged and needed to be repaired. Even so, its value was much higher than a supreme chaos treasure. Among the 81 treasures, only 2 were suspected to be Hongming source items. As for the supreme chaos treasures, there were many more of them. If one of the 2 Hongming source items could be used, It was already worth the price. The minimum goal is achieved. It was smoother than expected. Lin Feng's original plan was to obtain these 3 Hongmeng fruits and 2 Hongmeng source items. These 5 items might not be the most valuable, but they were the most suitable. As for the remaining treasures, he would take as many as he could. Lin Feng did not care that Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was behind him. He could not catch up to him. After leaving the Eye of Dark Killing Intent, he could immediately enter another Eye of Dark Killing Intent. The difference in time was enough to shake Heavenly King Zhao Kuo off. He entered this Eye of Dark Killing Intent. It's obvious that he followed me in. Out of the tens of thousands of Eyes of Dark Killing Intent, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo had come here and bumped into him. No one would believe that it was a coincidence. He must have seen him and realized that he had arrived earlier than him. That was why he had followed him. If he spreads what he saw, I probably won't be able to clear my name even if I jump into the Yellow River. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo had seen with his own eyes when he obtained the Hongmeng source item. Lin Feng had even seen his stunned expression. This was not within his control. Even if Heavenly King Zhao Kuo wanted to spread the news, he could only let him do so. In any case, he was already the target of public criticism. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was not the only one who saw him emerge from the dark murderous eye. Only those without strength should be afraid. He had enough strength to protect himself. What was there to be afraid of? The current Lin Feng was much stronger than when he had fought Xing Jin and the Eternal God. Swish! Lin Feng leaped out of the Eyes of Dark Malice once again. He looked around and saw that the entrance to the secret realm was bustling with activity. An astonishing number of cultivators had gathered in front of the Eyes of Dark Malice and were engaged in a battle, fighting against the Black Fiend. Every one of them was surrounded by a layer of perfect origin heart energy. Their battle with the Black Fiend was one-on-one, and they weren't interrupted. More and more Yuan Venerate powerhouses were rushing in. Lin Feng hadn't entered the Black Fiendish Eye for long, so there were still many Yuan Venerate powerhouses rushing in. Their eyes were filled with excitement, madness, and ambition. In terms of strength, they couldn't compare to super powerhouses like Ho Ying and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. However, their fighting spirit wasn't inferior. They also wanted to have a fortuitous encounter. They also wanted to become stronger. Zheng. The moment Lin Feng appeared, a pair of sharp eyes quickly locked onto him. Muzhen, the captain of the elite team of 13 Corps. 9 team members had entered the 9 Eyes of Dark Malice in batches. However, Muzhen had estimated that there were 30 Eyes of Dark Malice, so the success rate wasn't high. Thus, Muzhen wisely chose to stay where he was. Normally, one wouldn't come out after entering the secret realm, as the floating continent was connected to the Eyes of Dark Malice. However, Muzhen believed that since the human Huang Zun had just returned through the Eyes of Dark Malice, the possibility of him returning the next time was very high. Entering the Eyes of Dark Malice with the other team members would only increase his chances by a little. He might as well wait here for a better chance. He had been waiting. Muzhen didn't make a move. He didn't even reveal any aura. He hid among the cultivators and didn't attract any attention. There were too many variables if he made a move here. The situation was complicated, and there were so many Yuan Venerate powerhouses here that it could very well lead to a chaotic battle. He didn't need to do that. He just needed to follow the human Huang Zun into the next Eyes of Dark Malice, and he wouldn't be able to escape. Here. Muzhen's eyes flashed. The moment Lin Feng's figure disappeared, he followed him into the same Eyes of Dark Malice. The scene before his eyes changed drastically. The Black Malice suddenly appeared. Muzhen waved his giant sword and killed the Black Malice in an instant. Huh! Muzhen frowned slightly after entering the Eyes of Dark Malice. He and the human Huang Zun had entered one after the other. They had only killed the Black Malice for a short moment, but he couldn't sense the other party's aura after entering. He killed the black malice in an instant as well? Although Musen was surprised, he didn't slow down. He immediately moved forward after entering the passage because he knew that Lin Feng couldn't have gone far. He would be able to find him soon after leaving the passage. Whoosh! Musen's speed exploded. He quickly rushed out of the eyes of dark malice and entered the floating continent. This was a strange region. It was suspended in the air but seemed to be constantly changing position. The color of the void changed continuously, and the sound of the valley was endless. Bo! Musen released a seal in his hand to search for traces of Lin Feng. However, the sound waves in the surroundings were extremely strong. The entire environment seemed to be a separate space. The seal's energy dissipated, but there was no reaction. Is this the secret realm? Musen frowned and put away the seal with a solemn expression. He was also confused when he first entered the secret realm. He knew nothing about this place. He hesitated for a moment before moving forward. He believed that the human Huang Zun couldn't have gone far. What a pity! There doesn't seem to be any treasures here. Lin Feng floated in midair with a calm expression. He had already sensed danger when he came out of the eyes of dark malice. It had come from one of the 10 yuan venerate powerhouses that had been chasing him. Musen had underestimated Lin Feng. Lin Feng, who had been fighting all year round, was more than just a crafty rabbit with 3 burrows. His ability to sense danger and respond to it was top-notch. If Musen had fought directly, Lin Feng would have been in a lot of trouble. However, it was undoubtedly impossible for Musen to chase and capture him alive. In terms of familiarity with the terrain of the secret realm, if Lin Feng claimed to be second, who would dare claim to be first? Lin Feng had entered a total of 10,000 dark eyes of killing intent before, so he was familiar with all kinds of strange landforms. Although he did not find any treasure on this floating land, the special terrain made it very suitable for him to escape the pursuit. Lin Feng called it a Ferris wheel. Because this floating land was like a Ferris wheel, it presented a series of changing spaces. If you moved, you would go to another space, but if you didn't move, this space would slowly rotate, change, and rotate again like a Ferris wheel, until they returned to the original entrance of the eyes of dark malice. Suddenly, Lin Feng froze. Chapter 28-21. Lin Feng hesitated when he saw another eye of black killing intent appear in front of him. This was a passage to another void land, but this one was different from the others he had seen. Its eyelids were white and its pupils were black and white. To enter or not to enter? Lin Feng wasn't sure where he would go through this eye of black killing intent. Would it be the void land or a special place? Or perhaps this was an additional test? Any change in the secret realm could be an opportunity. But if he wasn't strong enough, it could also be a disaster. If I can enter this eye of black killing intent, it's likely that he can too. Even if I go to the secret realm, I'll run into it. Lin Feng wasn't confident that he could defeat Musen. He knew his own strength best. Although he had improved a lot these days, he hadn't reached the level where he could compete with top masters like Zhu Ying and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. I just transformed into a perfect Source C. I need time to stabilize it. Lin Feng suppressed this thought. The eye of black killing intent wouldn't run away. It wouldn't be too late for him to enter later. It was too risky to enter now. Moreover, there were many treasures waiting for him outside the eye of black killing intent. Instead of trying to grab some illusory treasures, it was better to grab all the treasures he could. It's good to distract him. He knows that I'm familiar with the terrain here. The eye of black killing intent is so unique. He thinks I'll enter. Lin Feng smiled. Although he knew this was the terrain of the Ferris wheel, it was the first time he had actually sat on a Ferris wheel. Soon, as the Ferris wheel rotated, the familiar eye of black killing intent appeared in front of him again. Lin Feng jumped in and returned. At this time, just as Lin Feng expected, Musen had entered the eye of black killing intent. Whoosh! As soon as Lin Feng came out of the eye of black killing intent, a familiar voice sounded in his ears. "Little brother, can we talk in private?" Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's voice fell into his ears. Lin Feng was helpless. This guy was like a ghost. He had just gotten rid of one, and now another came. Whoosh! Ignoring Heavenly King Zhao Kuo, Lin Feng directly entered another eye of black killing intent. It was very dangerous to stay at the entrance. Lin Feng, who had enemies all over the place, would not stay for long. Every time, he would only pause for a moment before switching. He might have been noticed before, but now that there were so many Yuan Venerate powerhouses at the entrance, it would be very difficult to discover Lin Feng unless they were keeping a close eye on him like Musashi. He was smarter than Wu Chang and knew more about Lin Feng. This was because Heavenly King Zhao Kuo had seen Lin Feng obtain the primordial origin item with his own eyes. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo didn't mind losing Lin Feng because he knew that Lin Feng would appear again. Sure enough, following closely behind Lin Feng, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo saw Lin Feng obtain another treasure with his own eyes. He narrowed his eyes and was completely sure that this sovereign human knew where the treasure was. However, it wasn't a Hongmeng source this time. Instead, it was a soul-type ultimate chaotic treasure. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's lips curled up as he quickly retreated. He put his hands behind his back and stood in front of the eye of black killing intent with a smile. The two spiral horns on his forehead emitted a faint glow. Whoosh! Lin Feng appeared in front of Heavenly King Zhao Kuo and their eyes met. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was indeed very smart. "Cooperate." "Gladly. I have 2 conditions." "Please speak, little brother." "First, you will get a 50-50 split. Second, will you help me if I am in danger?" Lin Feng went straight to the point since he couldn't avoid Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. It was a win-win situation. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo frowned slightly. "The first condition is a 30-70 split. You get 30% and I get 70%. The second condition is that if the 13 core wants to kill you, I will not help. Then I have no choice." Lin Feng turned around and left. Wait. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's expression changed when he saw Lin Feng leave without saying anything. "We can negotiate. Young man, don't be impulsive." "Haha, there is still room for negotiation, little brother." There was more than one entrance to the floating continent. There were exits that led to other floating continents. Although Heavenly King Zhao Kuo knew about Lin Feng's plan, he didn't fully understand it. He was only speculating. If the cooperation didn't work out and Lin Feng left through the other eye of black killing intent, it would be like drawing water with a bamboo basket. The 2 conditions are non-negotiable. Lin Feng wouldn't be polite. "This." Heavenly King Zhao Kuo hesitated. Lin Feng looked at Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. "I know 49 treasure locations. If you waste time now, you will be the one losing." 49 treasures? Heavenly King Zhao Kuo's expression changed. He was overjoyed. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food. With so many treasures, Heavenly King Zhao Kuo felt that it was worth it even if he offended Muzan and the 13 core. Everyone had their own opportunities in the secret realm. No matter how domineering the military was, they couldn't care less about these personal grudges. "Do you still need to think about it?" Happy cooperation. After exchanging messages for a long time, Lin Feng and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo formed an alliance. The 49 treasures were naturally false, but even so, this number was still extremely shocking. Lin Feng had his own considerations. Forming an alliance would bring more benefits than disadvantages to him. Although it was a combination of interests, and Heavenly King Zhao Kuo might not fully abide by it, he definitely wouldn't watch as Lin Feng was hunted down because he wouldn't be able to find the treasures himself. As for the 50-50 split, it was completely in Lin Feng's hands. Although Lin Feng wasn't completely familiar with the value of the treasures he knew, he could roughly estimate them. He just needed to guide Heavenly King Zhao Kuo to get some of the medium-value treasures that were suitable for him and some that weren't. Lin Feng knew very well that he wouldn't be able to get all of the 81 treasures. He wouldn't even be able to get half of them. The more time passed, the more dark eyes entered. The treasures he found were actually very easy to find. Anything that could be seen through the dark eyes barrier was basically found in a single search. Working with Heavenly King Zhaokuo, including the 50% he got from him, was actually more than working alone. Brother Qiyu, Brother Lin. Since he was working with Heavenly King Zhaokuo, Lin Feng had an extra Qiyu. He owed Heavenly King Zhaokuo a favor, and now was the time to return it. Moreover, the three-party alliance could also restrain each other. If Heavenly King Zhaokuo had other intentions, he would also be wary. Heavenly King, over here. Brother Qiyu over there. Lin Feng guided Heavenly King Zhaokuo and Qiyu to enter one after another. He also entered one of the dark eyes. His efficiency was quite high. At this time, the energy of the first Hongmeng fruit had been completely absorbed. The second one. Lin Feng decisively refined the second soul type, Hongmeng fruit. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 28-22. They were both Hongmeng fruits of the origin soul type, but they were completely different. The first Hongmeng fruit was used to expand the origin sea and supply it with energy. The second Hongmeng fruit was used to refine and strengthen the perfect origin soul. To Lin Feng, increasing his control over his origin soul was the most beneficial to his strength. However, the Hongmeng fruit was destined to be his. It wasn't something he could choose. Moreover, strengthening the perfect origin soul would also increase his control over it. Actually, the Hongmeng fruit that improves the perfect origin soul is more precious and rare. Lin Feng smiled. It didn't matter what kind of Hongmeng fruit it was, as long as it was an origin soul type. If one's origin soul was cultivated to the extreme, it had to be perfect in all aspects. A huge Hongmeng fruit bloomed in front of him. Layer by layer, it was very beautiful. There was a tiny red dot in the center of the stamen. It was another Hongmeng fruit. Lin Feng's figure flashed, and he took the stamen the moment it bloomed. This was an origin soul type Hongmeng fruit. In the secret realm, the most common Hongmeng fruits were for mental cultivation, followed by origin soul and origin soul type. There were many mental cultivation Hongmeng fruit. Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to take them. After taking the origin soul type fruits, he took the origin soul type fruit. He was walking the path of an origin primal chaos venerable. It was only a matter of time before he cultivated the perfect origin body. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lin Feng took the Hongmeng fruit and returned to the entrance of the secret realm. In just a moment, Heavenly King Zhaokuo and Qiyuzi appeared. Although they had to defeat the Black Fiend to enter, with their strength, they could kill him instantly. They weren't much slower than Lin Feng. I got it too. I got it too. Heavenly King Zhaokuo and Qiyuzi's eyes were filled with excitement. They were still a little skeptical about cooperating with Lin Feng. They weren't completely sure if Lin Feng was sincere about cooperating with them. However, after their first cooperation, they no longer had any doubt. Each of them had obtained a supreme chaos treasure. Even a peak Yuan venerate of the Taichu origin chaotic universe would find it difficult to obtain a supreme chaotic ultimate treasure. Was there anything happier than being able to obtain a treasure so easily right after entering the secret realm? Celestial King, here. Brother Saitama, over there. Lin Feng quickly pointed the way. Heavenly King Zhaokuo and Qiyuzi instantly moved as well. Both of them had a tacit understanding. Regardless of whether or not there were treasures on the floating continent, they would maintain a stable time to gather and avoid any mishaps. Whoosh! Lin Feng entered as well. Heavenly King Zhaokuang and Qiyuzi were all taught by treasures of the chaos or special materials. Lin Feng himself focused on the Hongmeng fruit. Although it was a collaboration, whatever treasures the two powerhouses could obtain were actually all controlled by Lin Feng. Lin Feng did not mind letting the two of them obtain some supreme chaos treasures. After all, they were useless to him now. Lin Feng himself was not at a disadvantage. Once, twice, thrice Lin Feng, Heavenly King Zhaoque, and Qi Yuzi had a tacit understanding. Basically, meeting at the entrance of the secret realm was something that happened in the blink of an eye. However, after so many times, it would still attract the attention of some people, especially Heavenly King Zhaoque, who was too famous. If it was just Lin Feng alone, no one would pay attention to him whenever he appeared at the entrance for a brief moment, unless he was constantly on guard like Muzan. However, with Heavenly King Zhaoque and Qi Yuzi, they would be too big of a target. Did you guys see Heavenly King Zhaoque, Qi Yuzi, and that human Huang Zun? Did you notice it too? They seem to be fiddling with something. I think so too. There's a secret. Follow that human Huang Zun. Many of the Yuan venerate powerhouses in the secret realm were old foxes. No details could be hidden from them. The Yuan venerate powerhouses might not dare to follow Heavenly King Zhaoque and Qi Yuzi, but Lin Feng was just a human Huang Zun. The Yuan venerate powerhouses naturally did not care. They might be able to shake them off once or twice, but Lin Feng could not keep shaking them off. That human Huang Zun knows the location of the treasures. Quick, return to the entrance of the secret realm. You and I will work together to kill that human Huang Zun. We will split the treasures in half. Their fangs were ferocious. Everyone had come for the treasures. Who wouldn't covet Huang Zun's treasures? When it was time to fight, the Yuan venerate powerhouses would not hesitate. The three Taichu cultivators were planning and waiting. They were not as apprehensive as Muzan. If they killed a human Huang Zun, then so be it. So what if there were more cultivators at the entrance? Chaos was even better. Whoosh! Lin Feng suffered a thunderous attack as soon as he appeared. The three Yuan venerate powerhouses attacked at the same time. Their tyrannical fighting strength caused the entrance of the secret realm to shake violently, and the expressions of the cultivators there changed. Only Lin Feng remained calm. He did not even move. A blue wall of light suddenly appeared in front of him. It flickered with a crystalline light and blocked all the attacks aimed at Lin Feng. The three Yuan venerate powerhouses widened their eyes. Suddenly, a powerful recoil surged and shook them until they were dizzy and vomiting blood. Whoosh! Heavenly King Zhaoque appeared in front of Lin Feng. His two spiral horns flickered as he looked disdainfully at the crowd. His kingly aura was undoubtedly evident at this moment. Heavenly King! Heavenly King! The three Yuan venerate powerhouses had ugly expressions. They had already known when the blue wall of light had appeared. This was Heavenly King Zhaoque's unique defensive technique. The situation could not be more obvious. Heavenly King Zhaoque wanted to protect that human Huang Zun. If Heavenly King Zhaoque had wanted to kill them, they would have already lost their lives. This is my little brother, Heavenly King Zhaoque said. If the three of you attack again, I will not show mercy next time. Crack! The three Yuan venerate powerhouses turned pale. Since Heavenly King Zhaoque had said so, what else could they say? If they really angered Heavenly King Zhaoque, they would have to bear the consequences. Even Hu Ying would not dare say that he could beat Heavenly King Zhaoque here. Heavenly King is indeed impressive. Qi Yuzi stepped forward with a smile. Since Heavenly King Zhaoque had made a move, he was happy to watch the show. We are in trouble. Heavenly King Zhaoque sighed. Lin Feng nodded. Although the three Yuan venerate powerhouses had failed to assassinate Luo Yunyang, the matter had already been exposed. Even if the three of them did not spread the news, there were many pairs of eyes watching at the entrance. One spread to 10, 10 spread to 100, and very soon everyone knew. I'm leaving. You can take the rest. Lin Feng made a prompt decision. He immediately divided the remaining treasures into 2 equal portions and informed Heavenly King Zhaoque and Qi Yuzi of the locations of the black eyes. Lin Feng had already taken more than 90% of the treasure's value. The remaining treasures were just icing on the cake. There was no need to be greedy. After all, half of what Heavenly King Zhao Kuo and Qi Yuzi had taken was his. Didn't you say that there were only 49 treasures? Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was stunned. The three of them had taken more than 40 treasures, but there were still nearly half of the black eyes that Lin Feng had pointed out. Is there? I forgot. Lin Feng smiled and left. Chapter 28-23. The Huangzun human is at the entrance. He knows the location of the treasures. He has a lot of treasures on him. Hurry up and stop him at the entrance of the secret realm. A tossed stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Paper couldn't contain fire. News of Lin Feng's treasures quickly spread like the wind. Everyone also knew that Lin Feng had formed an alliance with Heavenly King Zhao Kuang and Qi Yuzi. The Yuan Venerate powerhouses weren't stupid. They didn't dare offend Heavenly King Zhao Kuang and Qi Yuzi. However, a mere Huangzun human was nothing. Hundreds of Yuan Venerate powerhouses would appear together to stop Lin Feng. When the time came, they would see if Heavenly King Zhao Kuang and Qi Yuzi would dare to intervene. This sort of alliance was a combination of interests and was very fragile. What? The Huangzun human is at the entrance of the secret realm? Muzin was dumbfounded when he received the news. He had entered the new level of the secret realm through the black-white eye of evil and searched everywhere for Lin Feng but hadn't heard any news. Who would have thought that Lin Feng would actually return to the entrance of the secret realm? What a sudden turn of events! Damn it! I was completely fooled by him. Muzin gritted his teeth and cursed inwardly. Given his experience, how could he not know what Lin Feng had done? It was obvious that Lin Feng had taken a detour and lured him into the second level of the secret realm, while he himself had returned to the entrance. Don't let him escape. I'll be there soon. Muzin's figure quickly left the second level of the secret realm. Although the inheritance and treasures were precious, completing the Taichu general's mission was the most important thing. Lin Feng is at the entrance of the secret realm? Eternity God, who was also exploring the second level of the secret realm, was very calm when he heard the news. He nodded slightly. Looks like he obtained a lot of treasures. This little fellow's actions are really unexpected. Xing Jin was defeated by him. It's not an injustice. He raised his right hand and the wheel of time behind him rotated. Eternity God executed his ultimate technique. Time seemed to stop in front of him. A ferocious white mutant beast was instantly pierced by countless swords. Its body distorted and it disappeared without a trace. Effortlessly, he had already completed a kill. In terms of strength, although the Eternal God was inferior to the Eternal God Hope, he was undoubtedly at the peak of this place. He was much stronger than the current Lin Feng. His goal is the core of the highest level of the arcane realm. We'll meet again. The Eternal God wasn't like Muzin, who had gone back to look for Lin Feng. The Eternal God didn't want to play this game of cat and mouse. Moreover, he was very clear that this little mouse was very cunning. All the cats that wanted to catch him were killed by him. When he entered, the secret realm hadn't opened yet, so he couldn't enter. Based on his current actions. Oh, I think I understand. Eternal Universe God was the smartest person in Universe 7's Godly Inquisition, and Lin Feng's actions could not be concealed from him. However, the Eternal God didn't care about those ordinary treasures. His position in Universe 7's Godly Inquisition wasn't something that the Eternal God Xing Jin could compare with. He was in charge of the heavenly Tao Samsara. In terms of strength, he was inferior to the Eternal God Hope, but in terms of status, he wasn't the least bit inferior. The inheritance treasure of the master of 100 million wheels. The Eternal God held the scepter in his hand, his gaze deep. Lin Feng returned to the Ferris wheel's black pupils of demons. This was the only place where he had seen the black and white pupils of demons. Lin Feng's intuition told him that the black and white pupils of demons were very special. he should stop while he was ahead. Although there were 81 treasures, the most valuable and precious one, Lin Feng, was already in his hands. He didn't need to care too much about the others. Even if Heavenly King Zhao Kuo and Qi Yuzi violated the alliance agreement, Lin Feng didn't care about the 50-50 split. He had basically obtained everything he wanted. Of course, in Lin Feng's opinion, whether it was Heavenly King Zhao Kuo or Qi Yuzi, it was impossible for them to violate such an alliance agreement. With their status, reputation was very important. The energy of the third Hongmeng fruit is really astonishing. Lin Feng had already refined the second Hongmeng fruit long ago. His perfect source spirit had been strengthened several times. Although Lin Feng was only Huang Zun, both his source spirit and source C far exceeded that of a peak Yuan Venerate. This was because of Huang Zun's primal chaos source spirit. If it had been any other one, thought Huang Zun, there would have been a limit to their strength even if they had had the opportunity. However, Huang Zun's primal chaos source spirit didn't have that. To be precise, his upper limit was very high. His internal universe was perfect enough, so Lin Feng had a lot of room for improvement. The third Hongmeng fruit was the one with the strongest energy that Lin Feng had obtained. Heart cultivation fruit. In the mystic realm, the most abundant Hongmeng fruit was the heart cultivation fruit. Perfect source heart force. Source spirit and source force fruit couldn't surpass that energy limit, but perfect source heart force could. This was because the amount of perfect source heart force here was very large. This was the only Hongmeng fruit that Lin Feng had obtained that had truly reached the level of Hongmeng. Whoosh whoosh, Lin Feng felt as if the space of his source heart force had been completely opened up. Layers of darkness had transformed into the storage of perfect source heart force. The password of his internal universe had been unlocked, as if layers of black fog had been illuminated. If it hadn't been for this fruit, Lin Feng wouldn't have known that the amount of perfect source heart force in his body could be so large. Although the Silver Eye Realm and the Golden Eye Realm had absorbed it, they hadn't even reached 1% of what they had now. This is amazing, Lin Feng lamented. Although he hadn't deliberately cultivated perfect source heart force, he now had enough ammunition. When he used the City of Will in the future, it would undoubtedly be twice the result with half the effort. Lin Feng could feel his strength increasing every moment in the mystic realm. No, it was soaring. It's here. The Ferris wheel kept changing, and the scene in front of him became more and more familiar. Lin Feng gradually saw the black-white eyes of evil not far away. There were many secrets hidden there. Whoosh! He looked at the black-white eyes of evil. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart trembled. The familiar feeling attacked him again. It was the black fiend that he had fought 10,000 times before. It was a formless and powerful shadow. The black fiend's strength was determined by his willpower. This time, the black-white fiend that appeared was half white and half black. Its strength was much stronger than the black fiend's. However, the current Lin Feng was no longer the ignorant Lin Feng of the past. 100 Spider Surprise Attack. Lin Feng's control of the phantom arachnid hand was almost perfect. Although it required 100 times more perfect origin soul to control it, his perfect origin soul was now stronger, and his origin C had also transformed. Most importantly, his perfect origin heart force could control the entire situation. Countless phantom spider hands attacked and tore the black-white fiend into pieces. Instant kill. I've become stronger. The phantom spider hand flashed in Lin Feng's hand. He was very calm because this result was within his expectations. The current him was really strong. If the Black Fiend Eye is the key to the entrance of the mystic realm and the first level, then the black-white eyes of evil, it should be the key to the second level. Lin Feng stepped into the black-white eyes of evil and sped out of the passage. The feeling of calling attacked his mind again. It was much clearer and stronger than before. In an instant, Lin Feng sped out of the black-white eyes of evil's passage. A new world. The second level of the mystic realm. Chapter 28-24. This is the second level of the mystic realm. It was the same floating continent, but the view was different. Looking down from this floating continent, there was only an endless void and no ground could be seen. Lin Feng had wondered what this floating continent was like when he had been shuttling through the black fiendish eye on the first level. Now, he knew. There should be quite a number of black-white fiendish eyes. Lin Feng had a rough understanding of the structure of the mystic realm. He had entered the black fiendish eye and searched for black-white fiendish eyes on the various floating continents before entering the second level. His luck was pretty good, as he had discovered it very quickly. However, discovering the black-white fiendish eyes shouldn't be difficult. The real challenge was defeating the black-white fiendish eyes. My willpower is strong and comparable to an extraordinary almighty. That's why the black-white fiendish eye's strength is suppressed and can't unleash its full potential. Under normal circumstances, the black-white fiendish eye's strength would be very terrifying. This checkpoint alone will stop at least 90% of the cultivators. Lin Feng had also thought carefully about entering the second level. Danger? Staying on the first level was even more dangerous. Although Heavenly King Zhao Kuo and Qi Yuzi had formed an alliance, there were actually many situations where he was alone. There were so many cultivators on the first level, so there were bound to be some ambitious ones who ambushed him. He could kill 1, 2, or 3 of them, but could he kill dozens or even hundreds of them in a row? Lin Feng couldn't do it. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that he lacked endurance. The power of the strongest Source C would increase, but his endurance would decrease. The great Source Soul Fruit could indeed replenish the perfect Source C, but the effect wasn't as good as replenishing the ordinary Source C. It would be difficult to advance in a one versus many situation. Although Lin Feng had made remarkable progress in controlling objects to attack, he had only reached the standard of a peak Yuan Venerate. None of the peak Yuan Venerates here could be underestimated. I still have to get my cultivation back on track as soon as possible. Lin Feng thought back to when he was wielding a saber and could easily fight against 100 enemies alone. Now he had to calculate every step he took and rest after every battle. Lin Feng felt helpless. However, he really didn't have much time to cultivate his perfect origin source body or his saber technique. He was walking on a broken bridge with no way back. He could only keep moving forward. There's still a tail following behind me. When Lin Feng entered the black fiendish eyes, he knew that he couldn't shake them off. However, the black-white fiendish eyes of them all except for one. What a terrifying illusion, warrior! 13 core. Musin. 13 core. Musin. 13 core. 13 core cores. 13 core. Black-white. In terms of strength, Wu Zong could be ranked in the second tier. Although he was not as strong as Wu Zong, he was not inferior to old deity Wu Yu and Rolling Blade disciple. His combat strength was comparable to an upper-level mighty figure. These were the elites of 13 core. Compared to the elites of the 7th Universe Army, they were worlds apart. Even so, Wu Kai was seriously injured in the face of the powerful black-white fiendish eyes. Musin had been able to pass through unscathed because his strength was in the top echelon. But the Taichu cultivators in the second echelon were obviously weaker. Wu Kai wasn't a mind cultivator. His will wasn't particularly strong. He had been able to kill the black-white fiendish eyes by force. Captain, I've followed the target into the second level of the secret realm. Wu Kai quickly sent out a message and shared his location. Soon, the communicator could be used perfectly even in the secret realm. Swoosh. Wu Kai's left wrist flashed. He quickly searched for signs of life around him. As an elite of 13 core, his equipment was much better than the other Taichu cultivators. Suddenly, the jade bead on his left wrist emitted a red light. Wu Kai's expression changed drastically. In an instant, boom! There was no time to react. His internal universe quickly defended against the attack. However, that vast and lofty city came crashing over. His internal universe was overturned, and a huge hole was created in his soul-protecting treasure. It's the Origin Sea attack. Wu Kai's face twisted as he stubbornly resisted. However, the energy of his opponent's Origin Sea surged through the hole, and every drop of it was filled with boundless energy. When gathered together, the energy was so boundless that it was suffocating, and it seemed like it could annihilate everything in its path. Too strong. How can he be so strong? Wu Kai couldn't believe it. He had fought with Lin Feng before. In the end, he and his companions had forced Lin Feng into the 100 million wheels. In his opinion, this Huang Zun human was nothing more than that. But now, in a one-on-one battle, the opponent seemed to be a different person. His strength had increased by more than one level. It was very different from the information. Boom. Boom. Although Wu Kai tried his best to resist, in the face of this terrible impact, his defense was quickly destroyed. The Origin soul in his body was swallowed, and his internal universe collapsed. Bang! Wu Kai's eyes widened. He was defeated and died. In a good state, he might have had the power to fight, but first, he was exhausted by the black-white demons and was seriously injured. Then, he encountered the Origin Sea attack, which made things worse. He lost. The result of losing was death. 13 core elites. Lin Feng appeared in front of Wu Kai. He had already known the origin of this group of Taichu cultivators from Heavenly King Zhao Kuo. The strong second generation he had killed that day obviously belonged to the 13 core. It was not surprising that they would seek revenge. Lin Feng didn't regret it. In the situation at that time, he didn't do anything wrong. Even if he could turn back time and do it again, he would still do the same. As a martial artist, he should do what he should do. There was no need to be afraid of anything. If they wanted revenge, they could come. He didn't even care about the will of heaven in Universe 7. The Hongming Sea was huge, so how could he care about the Taichu Origin Sea's army? There are a lot of treasures. Lin Feng put away Wu Kai's treasures. Although there was nothing he wanted, they were all valuable. Many of the Supreme Chaos treasures were supreme grade. Egyo Communicator. Lin Feng now knew how to use it. Although he couldn't use Wu Kai's Egyo Communicator, he could clearly see the message he had just sent. It seems that a large group of 13 core elites will catch up soon. Lin Feng smiled indifferently, destroyed Wu Kai's Egyo Communicator, and left. Wu Kai, please reply if you copy. Sizzle. Captain Muzin's expression was ugly. He had entered the second level of the secret realm early in the morning. After learning about Lin Feng's news, he hurriedly rushed out. He had just met up with a few team members when he received Wu Kai's message, which made Muzin's veins bulge. Lin Feng had entered the second level of the secret realm. Wu Kai hasn't replied yet, Captain? Vice Captain Ming Shi frowned. His Egyo Communicator can't be reached. Muzin gritted his teeth. He knew what had happened. Wu Kai had met with misfortune. This, Vice Captain Ming Shi's expression changed. I won't let him go. Muzin's green eyes were murderous. Chapter 28-25. On the second level of the secret realm, Lin Feng was like a fish in water. The completely refined Hongmeng fruit contained much more energy than the first and second Hongmeng fruits combined. This was a true top-grade Hongmeng fruit. His inner universe had been completely developed, and his perfect origin heart force was overflowing. To be able to instantly kill a Taichu cultivator stronger than Xing Jin, Lin Feng relied on his perfect origin heart force, which was much stronger than before. The City of Will's power was boundless. One-on-one, I'm not bad. Lin Feng was in a good mood. Although he had successfully killed his opponent, he had used up half of his perfect origin C. The current perfect origin C was a bit smaller than before, but the Origin C's energy was more pure and perfect. There were pros and cons. Fortunately, He had many great origin soul fruits, so his recovery wasn't slow. Birds chirp and flowers smell. This floating continent is very peaceful. Lin Feng slowed down. After experiencing so many black eyes of killing intent, Lin Feng clearly knew that every floating continent was special. Birds chirp and flowers smell like spring. Was it really that good? The calmer it was, the more dangerous it was. The calling has become much stronger. It seems that I'm getting closer and closer to the secret of the 100 million-wheel tomb. Lin Feng was sure that this wasn't the end, but he was getting closer and closer. Suddenly, Lin Feng's heart moved. A light and warm breeze blew over, like a spring breeze caressing one's face, causing the earth to change greatly. The originally beautiful flower instantly grew bone spurs, and its petals turned from red to black. It actually left the ground and opened its bloody mouth to swallow Lin Feng. Not far away, a dark green tree came to life. Its evil expression was as ferocious as a devil's. Its branches flew like tens of thousands of poisonous snakes, coiling around Lin Feng. The white clouds in the void gradually darkened, and like sticky mud, they tightly wrapped around Lin Feng. Below, stalks of green grass bared their fangs and bit at Lin Feng like little ghosts. They were vicious and cold. The beautiful garden suddenly turned into a devil's hell. Illusion? No, it's true. Coiling silk stacked shadows. Lin Feng had long since been prepared for this. Neither panicking nor panicking, the phantom spider hand transformed into countless coiling threads, attacking and defending at the same time. The space around him was completely airtight. Lin Feng's heart was tranquil as he looked at the ever-changing world. Everything was a change of heart. If he were to attack, his mental state would be affected by the changes in this world. Of course, it was also possible to use offense to counter offense and violence to counter violence, but this would consume a lot of energy. When the entire floating continent was filled with enemies, it was extremely terrifying. Guard. Lin Feng's control over his origin spirit was already quite strong. Heart cultivators, no matter what, cannot waver their state of mind. Although Lin Feng hadn't been in contact with mental cultivation for long, his comprehension was pretty good. Using the phantom arachnid hand, he easily defended against the natural attacks of these plants and came out unscathed. Although their attacks were all-encompassing and had no blind spots, the power of their attacks was not fatal. What was truly fatal was the power of the heart. Whoosh, another gust of wind blew, blowing away the haze. The originally ferocious plants and trees regained their calm and returned to normal. The darkness in the sky dissipated and welcomed light. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed once more. When one's heart was calm, everything would naturally develop in a good direction. In the world of mental cultivation, the heart was the most important. Interesting. Lin Feng's figure was like an arrow, not stopping at all. Although there might be treasures here, staying here was undoubtedly dangerous. If the 13 Corps' elite soldiers weren't stupid, they would have already shared their location. At that time, the other 13 Corps' elite soldiers would have rushed over. Increasing the distance was the best solution. Lin Feng didn't have any deep grudges with the 13 Corps. It was just that if they wanted to kill him, he couldn't just let them do it. Xiao. Lin Feng was extremely fast. Earlier, he had slowed down because he didn't know what dangers there might be. Now, he sped up because he knew there would be danger soon. When that strange gust of wind blew, the plants and trees would become abnormally evil and murderous. Whoosh, another gust of warm wind blew, but this time, Lin Feng saw those familiar eyes. Whoosh, the black-white fiend appeared in front of him, its powerful killing intent surging towards him. Good timing. Lin Feng laughed heartily. The phantom spider hand met it, his willpower not wavering in the slightest. His willpower, comparable to that of a transcendent, completely suppressed the black-white fiend. Soon, Lin Feng entered the black-white fiend's tunnel. A new floating continent. Every one of them was special. Every one of them could be dangerous. Every one of them could contain treasures. Every floating continent has at least one eye of black malice and one eye of black malice. Lin Feng discovered the uniqueness of the second floating continent. It was completely different from the first floating continent. Through the black-white fiend eye, one could return to the first level of the secret realm. Through the black-white fiend eye, one could teleport to the second floating continent. The reverse was also obvious. Each level has tens of thousands of black-white fiend eyes. I believe that only a few hundred floating continents have black-white fiend eyes. The number of black-white fiend eyes represented the number of floating continents in the second level. Based on the ratio of the floating continents he had entered, the ratio was about 1%. I should be considered one of the first to enter the second level. Although Lin Feng had entered and exited the first level so many times, he had only explored it briefly. He had never gone too deep into the floating continent. Each time, he had entered near the entrance, taken the treasures, and left. It hadn't taken much time. If he had really taken all 81 treasures, as well as other suspected treasures, and explored them all, it would have taken a lot more time. Now, it seemed that he had hit the jackpot. There aren't many floating continents in the second level, and the treasures are even more limited. It's first come, first serve. After deducing the level of the secret realm, Lin Feng was enlightened. The second level was superior to the first level in every aspect. The treasures must be the same. The best treasures on the first level were Hongmeng source items. He believed that the treasures on the second level, they would definitely be Hongmeng source items. Of the 81 treasures on the first level, only 2 are Hongmeng source items. One was the third Hongmeng fruit he had obtained, which was still being refined. The other was the small blue umbrella, which was a defensive treasure. Hopefully, I can get at least one more. There were benefits to being early. Lin Feng had already tasted it on the first level of the secret realm. Although finding treasures depended on luck, they were all on the first level of the secret realm. Not many people would enter the second level, as it wasn't easy to find the black-white fiend eyes. He hadn't known about the black-white fiend eyes on the first level. Most of the top Yuan Venerate powerhouses didn't know about them either. Only a few lucky ones would discover them. Let's take advantage of the fact that the first group of Yuan Venerates haven't arrived yet to obtain a few treasures. Lin Feng sped up. Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. Mobile reading website M. Chapter 28-26. Lin Feng's guess was right. The first group of powerhouses, such as Zhu Ying, Great King Green Hammer, Daoist En, and the others, were all still on the first level of the secret realm. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo, who had received Lin Feng's instructions, was like a fish in water. They were different from Lin Feng, as Lin Feng had entered the floating continent and taken the treasures before leaving. However, the other Yuan Venerate powerhouses, including Zhu Ying and Great King Green Hammer, had to search the entire floating continent for treasures, so it would take a lot more time. There were only 88 floating continents on the second level of the secret realm. However, there were only 32 black-white eyes of evil, as there were 56 floating continents on the second level that couldn't be entered directly from the first level. Searching for 32 black-white eyes of evil among more than 30,000 black-white eyes of evil wasn't very difficult, but it would undoubtedly take a long time. Given the strength of Zhu Ying, Great King Green Hammer, and the other powerhouses, it would be easy for them to pass through the black-white eyes of evil. However, they hadn't seen the black-white eyes of evil and didn't know of their existence. The last time the secret realm opened was 573, 96 million epochs ago. Only 3 Yuan Venerates knew some secrets of the secret realm. 2 of them were mind cultivators from the Taichu origin chaotic universe, and one of them was Daoist En. However, Daoist En was very unlucky. Although he knew of the existence of the black-white eyes of evil, he had searched more than 200 floating continents without finding anything. The last one was also from the Taichu origin chaotic universe, but he was currently in the 7th universe's divine tribunal Eternal Aeon God. Eternal Aeon God was the first to enter the 2nd level of the mystic realm. So far, he had explored 5 floating continents and harvested a treasure. Since the mystic realm opened, his harvest was second only to Lin Feng's. The second to enter the 2nd level of the secret realm was Muzin, who had chased after Lin Feng and entered by accident. However, things didn't go as planned. He returned to the 1st level just as he was about to obtain a treasure. The third to enter the 2nd level of the secret realm was a Yuan Venerate from the 1st universe. He had really entered by accident. Actually, quite a few Yuan Venerates had discovered the black-white fiendish eye, but the strength of the black-white fiendish eye was so overwhelming that only a few of them were able to pass through it. This was a natural barrier, a huge dividing ridge. There's no eye of black fury on this floating continent. When Lin Feng was in the 2nd level of the secret realm, he had entered 2 floating continents in a row. Both of them had eyes of black baleful intent, which meant that he could directly enter the 1st level of the secret realm. However, he had searched this floating continent and found nothing except for eyes of black baleful intent. So, this floating continent is special? Or could it be that the floating continent from before was just a connection between the 1st and 2nd floors, and not the real floating continent of the 2nd floor? Regardless of which possibility it is, the chances of there being treasures here should be much higher. Although Lin Feng hadn't been able to find any treasures on the 2nd level of the secret realm, he wasn't discouraged. Treasures were destined by fate. If one was fated to find them, they would naturally be found. Even if they didn't, it didn't really matter. For the current Lin Feng, the treasures were enough. Every floating continent was special because they were all personally created by the Wheel Master, and they were all independent worlds. The giant world! The life forms here were all incomparably huge. Rock giants, lava giants, and even ordinary mutated beasts were all so huge that they covered the sky. Huge footprints were left on the ground, looking incomparably terrifying. Galloping in this giant world, Lin Feng seemed very small. What was frightening was not that these giants were strong, but that although their bodies were huge, their defenses weren't weak at all. Lin Feng had fought a rock giant before. The phantom spider hand couldn't break through its defenses even after using all its strength. Fortunately, the rock giant's movements were relatively slow. Although he couldn't kill it, Lin Feng could still safely avoid it with his powerful senses. Treasures! Lin Feng traveled through the giant world, but he still hadn't found any strange existences. There were quite a lot of life forms here. Although they were only at the initial stage of sentience, they were still in the category of life forms. If there were treasures, would they have been taken away by these life forms? Following the clues and thoughts, Lin Feng followed the giants and galloped through this land. Soon, he made a discovery. There was a sacred land in the giant world. However, there were countless giants guarding the sacred land. All sorts of giants were like guards. They were devout and loyal. Although they were simple and honest, they gave off a rather reliable feeling. There must be treasures here. Lin Feng was certain. Who would believe that there were no treasures with such tight security? However, Lin Feng had experienced the strength of the giants and his memory was still fresh. The phantom spider hand wasn't weak anymore. Although it wasn't at the level of an almighty, it was still considered outstanding among peak Yuan Venerates. However, it couldn't even break through the defenses of the giant. How could he enter? Since he couldn't defeat them with force, he could only use his wits. Lin Feng then tried various methods, such as creating a diversion and luring the snake out of its hole, but every giant remained indifferent. It was as if they were frozen in that moment and didn't move an inch. If he hadn't sensed their tyrannical auras, he would have thought that they were petrified. Being stupid had its advantages, and that was having a strong ability to execute. Every giant was clear about their duty. They existed to protect and protect. This isn't going to be easy. Lin Feng was also helpless. He couldn't force his way through, nor could he use his wits. He was frustrated that he couldn't break through the wall, but there was nothing he could do. Using the source sea to attack wouldn't work either, as the giants simply wouldn't fall for it. Even if Heavenly King Zhao Kuo came personally and could defeat 1 or 2 giants, there are dozens of giants here. It would be difficult for him to win. Heavenly King Zhao Kuo was already one of the strongest fighting forces in the mystic realm. If even he couldn't enter the sacred land, then the difficulty of this realm set up by the Wheel Master would be too high. Was this the true difficulty of the second level of the floating continent? Impossible! If that was the case, the Hongmeng source item wouldn't have appeared on the first level of the mystic realm. Lin Feng had thought about it carefully. The reason the Wheel Master had set up the mystic realm was for the inheritance. The opening of the mystic realm might very well have been because he sensed the possibility of the inheritance. If that was the case, what the Wheel Master cared about was mental cultivation. Qi Yuzi had also said that mental cultivators would be like fish in water here. The Black Fiend and the Black-White Fiend from before were enough to see this. Mental cultivation. Could it be that mental cultivation has the ability to attack them? But using the City of Will to attack with the Source Sea doesn't have any effect. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Yes, the giants weren't afraid of the Source Sea's attack. Simply using the City of Will to attack would have no effect. Mental cultivation attack. Lin Feng muttered softly in his heart. It wasn't that he didn't have mental cultivation attack. He could give it a try. In an instant, Lin Feng's figure appeared in the sky above the sacred land. The giants looked as if their tails had been stepped on. Their eyes were filled with vigilance as they waved their giant weapons and smashed them at Lin Feng. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website M. Chapter 28-27. 10 Desires Tribulation. Lin Feng used an illusion-type peak chaotic treasure. Currently, Lin Feng had only mastered the phantom arachnid palm, and he wasn't very proficient in illusions. It was easier to master a peak chaotic treasure, so Lin Feng had already mastered it. Although it was a peak chaotic treasure, its main attack wasn't illusions but the City of Wills, trap, suppress and control. Like the City of Wills, smash, it was a mental cultivation ability of the Qin Emperor's origin heart. However, its effects were different. One was an active attack combined with the impact of the Source Sea and the control of object. The other was combined with illusions and the impact of the Source Spirit. Illusions were what mental cultivators were best at. Mind cultivators had the ability to create illusions and reality. Illusory techniques were completely different when used by Yuan venerates with mind cultivators. Illusory techniques used by Yuan venerates with mind cultivators 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 with mind cultivators. Layers of illusions attacked the depths of one's mind. Although the 10 Desires Tribulation was a peak chaotic treasure, it could unleash great power regardless of whether it was used by a Yuan venerate or a mental cultivator. If one was good at both and complemented each other, the power would be even more amazing. Plop, plop. The scene was extremely spectacular. Dozens of towering giants knelt down and fell into the illusions in an instant. Their huge bodies seemed to be trapped in place and unable to move. Their dazed and sluggish expressions were enough to show that it was effective. So simple? Even Lin Feng couldn't believe it. He had originally thought that it would take a considerable amount of effort and time, and that it might not necessarily succeed. However, it was a perfect success on the first try. Unfortunately, Lin Feng didn't have the ability to take their lives even though they were trapped in the illusions. Their bodies were made of iron and their defenses were too strong. However, it was useless to kill them. Whoosh! Lin Feng went straight in. This time, there were no giants guarding, so the gate of the sacred ground was opened without any obstruction. Lin Feng didn't know when the giants would wake up, so he made the best use of his time to search for the giants' sacred ground as soon as possible. However, Lin Feng felt that the giants were deeply trapped in the illusions and definitely wouldn't wake up anytime soon. No matter how strong an opponent was, they had weaknesses. Mind cultivator. After this battle, Lin Feng's understanding of the secret realm had deepened. After entering the Holy Land, he quickly saw numerous majestic palaces. They were extremely holy, and the calling in his heart became inexplicably stronger. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure flashed and he looked up. It was a statue of an indomitable man, as if he was in the wilderness. He carried a giant hammer, and his upper body was naked. A striped beast's skin was tied around his waist, and below him were several simple and honest giants. They were prostrating on the ground as if they were his subjects. Is he the master of the giants? Or, his heart was beating fast. Lin Feng looked at the man who was high up in the air. There was a string of strange beads around his neck. Although his eyes were empty, there was a natural aura about him, as if he was the master of this world. His willpower was shockingly tyrannical, and the aura emitted from his body made people unconsciously want to worship him. There was no aura of life, but there was an aura of life that was stronger than any other life form. Is he the master of 100 million wheels? Who else could make these giants worship him? It could only be the master of 100 million wheels who created them. Combined with the excited calling, Lin Feng was 90% sure. There are fruits. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Even if he didn't sense them, he knew that they were Hongmeng fruits. The fruit trees that grew beside the statue of the master of 100 million wheels were bustling with activity. There were dozens of them. The taller ones could reach the statue's waist. The shorter ones could reach the statue's thighs. The difference wasn't too great. Most of the dozens of fruit trees didn't have any fruits, but there were 3 trees with green fruit. Each of them was quite large, and one could tell at a glance that they were produced in the giant world. One of them was ripe, one was half-ripe, and one was still very green. Lin Feng didn't hold back. He instantly swept up the 3 fruits and put them into his bag. He couldn't wait for these fruits to ripen. He didn't have the time. No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. He would take it first. Perfect origin energy. Without a doubt, these were origin energy fruits. Lin Feng hesitated for a moment, then refined the green one. Although it was green, it was bigger than 100 Lin Feng added together. Luckily, he refined and absorbed the energy. If he swallowed it, who knew how long it would take? As expected. Just as Lin Feng had guessed, once the origin energy fruit was refined, the vigorous energy circulated throughout his body, nourishing his source body. His body was instantly strengthened, and in a short while, it was strengthened to the limit of his source body. Too fast. At this moment, less than a quarter of the green origin energy fruit had been consumed. The majestic energy kept attacking. Lin Feng's internal universe was already very strong, and his perfect origin soul and perfect origin C gave Lin Feng enough foundation to transform. His source body transformed in an instant. Although his power realm and comprehension were still insufficient, but the transformation was forcefully initiated. That feeling was like his body was being pushed by the energy and he was losing control. However, it was excellent for Lin Feng. His body was able to withstand it in all aspects. In that case, there was no difference whether it was a forced transformation or an autonomous transformation. As long as the transformation was completed, it would be enough. 2/4, 3/4. The green origin energy fruit was constantly consumed, and Lin Feng's perfect source body gradually completed the transformation. A powerful force surged in his body. That was the perfect origin energy, and his internal universe underwent earth-shaking changes. Although Lin Feng was still at the level of Huang Zun, he was only a step away from the ultimate god venerate. As long as he comprehended the existing nomological laws, he would be able to advance. All the conditions were in place. Now, my internal universe is comparable to a peak yuan venerate in the Taichu origin chaotic universe. Lin Feng had been at a disadvantage in every battle, but now, with the transformation of his perfect source body, his internal universe had been strengthened by another level, so it was no longer a weakness. Compared to a peak yuan venerate in Universe 7, there were very few people whose internal universes were stronger than Lin Feng's. Perfect origin energy. Again. Lin Feng quickly refined the first green origin energy fruit. Although his perfect source body had transformed, it was just like the transformation of his perfect origin sea. It had transformed but not expanded. It was like an artificial lake that had just been created with only a little water inside. The perfect origin sea couldn't expand, but the perfect source body could. Lin Feng had only refined the first of the 3 origin energy fruits, and it was only the one with the least energy. The second origin energy fruit was half-ripe. It contained nearly 10 times more perfect origin energy than the first green origin energy fruit. Majestic energy poured in, causing Lin Feng's internal universe, which had just slowed down, to revolve at a high speed. His perfect source body absorbed it hungrily and frantically strengthened it. Strengthen, strengthen, and strengthen again. Lin Feng had a lot of opportunities on the second level of the secret realm. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website Chapter 2828. Strengthen, strengthen, and strengthen again. The second half-ripened source power fruit molded Lin Feng's perfect origin source body to perfection. Although it hadn't reached its limit, it had already surpassed most peak yuan venerates. This upgrade had saved Lin Feng countless epochs of bitter cultivation. There was also a fully ripened source power fruit. I can't absorb anymore. The giants are about to wake up, and my perfect origin source body is almost full. Lin Feng was already satisfied with this upgrade. Now wasn't the time to linger. The other places in the giants' holy land had yet to be explored. The same illusion technique would be much weaker when used a second time. This was especially true when the enemy took the initiative to break away from the illusion technique. Although the second time should be possible given the giant's success rate, there was no need to refine the source power fruit here in such a hurry. Lin Feng looked at the statue of the 100 million wheels master as if he could comprehend something. However, he wasn't sure. After another glance, Lin Feng headed to the other areas of the giant's holy land. The giant's holy land wasn't very big, so he could explore it completely very quickly. Besides the statue of the 100 million wheels master and the sacred palaces, the most peculiar thing was the crystal-like blue lake. Lin Feng was certain that this blue crystal lake was most likely the source of the giant's world. To enter or not to enter? Will I become a giant after entering? This was Lin Feng's doubt. The giant's world was very special. They weren't special life forms, but they had huge bodies. Most importantly, their bodies didn't weaken their defenses because of their size. On the contrary, their defenses were exceptionally tough. Luo Yunyang's phantom spider hand attacks couldn't even break through their defenses. A defense with no weaknesses. Let's give it a try. There was no reason to give up after finding a treasure. Lin Feng didn't think that the dozens of fruit trees were treasures. This large blue crystal lake was truly left behind by the 100 million wheels master. Refining had no effect. The energy of the blue crystal lake was very special. As soon as Lin Feng entered it, he felt as if he was a fairy. What was different from what he had expected was that the energy of the blue crystal lake was very pure and very compatible with his body. No, it's not compatible with my body. It's the perfect source heart force. Lin Feng soon discovered. His previous judgment was wrong. The endless energy from the blue crystal lake resonated with his perfect origin heart force and then turned into drops of crystalline matter that merged into his bloodline and strengthened his perfect origin body. Just as it paused, it continued to strengthen. I see. With the absorption of the Blue Crystal Lake's energy, Lin Feng soon understood where the secret of the giant's world was. The Blue Crystal Lake's energy could only be absorbed and refined with the help of a secret mental cultivation method. If one didn't use the secret technique and simply soaked in it for a long time, they would still be able to absorb it. However, it wouldn't be a perfect absorption. Instead, it would cause their bodies to grow larger and larger until they were like giant. Although his defense would increase, his movement speed, attack speed, and other aspects would slow down due to his body size. As the saying goes, there are pros and cons. What was the use of being a meat shield with strong defense and strong strength? Although heart cultivators cultivate both the body and the soul of the origin, they are not as pure and powerful as those who cultivate only one Tao. Lin Feng carefully tasted the heart cultivation secret art that had been fused into the Blue Crystal Lake and sighed with emotion. Although this wasn't the first time he obtained a mental cultivation method, it was the most powerful mental cultivation method, Blue Crystal Lake secret technique. Previously, when he killed mental cultivators in the 100 million wheel tomb, he obtained all kinds of mental cultivation methods from their storage rings. Therefore, Lin Feng knew a thing or two about them. Mental cultivators, in terms of origin body, were inferior to experts who cultivated the strength heavenly Tao. In terms of origin soul, they were inferior to experts who cultivated the soul heavenly Tao. Although they cultivated both at the same time, merging them was one aspect. The limit of their combat strength was another aspect. If a mental cultivator wanted to be strong, they had to use the perfect source heart force. Therefore, the key to the mental cultivation method was how to use the perfect source heart force's auxiliary ability to unleash the strongest power. Lin Feng had been using the Qin Emperor's origin heart and the City of Will. He already knew that the perfect source heart force's main offensive power was lacking. It was inferior to origin energy and origin soul power. Its power mainly came from auxiliary abilities. It was like an army's strategist. He could use all kinds of strategies to control the enemy, but it would be difficult for him to go to the battlefield and kill the enemy. Collect. Lin Feng collected all the Blue Crystal Lake without hesitation. It would be a sin if he didn't take the treasures. The treasures left behind by the 100 million wheel master were for the fated ones to take. If a mental cultivator didn't enter the lake, they wouldn't be able to sense the Blue Crystal Lake secret technique. Cultivating the Blue Crystal Lake secret technique wasn't something that could be done in a day. Moreover, the giants could wake up at any time. Lin Feng didn't want to stay here any longer. After memorizing the Blue Crystal Lake secret technique, he quickly looted the lake and left. Wheeze! Coo! As Lin Feng left, the giants gradually woke up. They were still confused. They scratched their heads as if they didn't know what was going on. They held their giant weapons and continued to guard the sacred ground. That was their duty. Although the giants had good defense, they only had basic consciousness and didn't know how to think. Not long after Lin Feng left. Swoosh! 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 The elites of 13 Corps, Musen, and the other experts also came to this world of giant. They all entered through the Ferris wheel's Eye of Dark Fury. They arrived at the second level of the secret realm in the same position as Lin Feng. This was the third floating continent Lin Feng came to after entering the second level of the secret realm. Captain, there must be treasures here. Nonsense. Who doesn't know that these monsters are guarding this treasure land? Do they have nothing better to do? What should we do? Captain, should we continue chasing? Musen's eyes flashed. He drew his giant sword. Chasing the target is important, but so are the treasures. Even if we can't complete the mission, we can still hand over the treasures and forgive our dereliction of duty. But these monsters have good defense and are quite strong. You don't have to fight them head-on. Delay them. Yelu and I will charge in and take the treasures. Musen ordered. They had a big advantage. They had more people. Yes, Captain. Following Musashi's command, The elite warriors instantly rushed towards the giant. When the giants guarding the Holy Land saw the invaders, they roared. Previously, they were muddle-headed and felt like they had been hit by a stick, so they had nowhere to vent their anger. Boom, boom, boom. The berserk power wreaked havoc, and the pain was visible to the naked eye. Musashi swallowed his saliva, and together with Vice-Captain Higashi, they took advantage of the chaos to sneak in. A gust of wind swept past the back of their heads, causing Musashi's hair to stand on end. In that instant, with a pring sound, a few of their bones broke. Go in. Muzan swallowed his blood, endured his injuries, and entered the sacred ground. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version update website,